All right. Call the work session to order. And first item is draft ordinance for trespassing consideration. Mr. County Attorney.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is an ordinance that came up from a discussion of, doesn't matter why it came up. What we discovered is the sheriff's department is not empowered currently to, if the county administrator were to ask the sheriff's department to prevent certain people from being on county property, the sheriff's department isn't empowered to do so. There's a state law provision that allows any, and in fact it doesn't just apply to the county, it applies to businesses as well, that they can deputize the sheriff's department to allow the sheriff's department to require people to leave that property. So if for example, the counties, if we pass this ordinance, we can then designate the sheriff's department, and if the sheriff's deputy sees somebody on a part of county property after closing hours, they would have authority to ask them to leave. Right now, if the sheriff's deputy asks somebody to leave county property, they're not authorized to ask anyone to leave county property, so it would never hold up in court.
So just so I understand, if somebody's here and the county administrator says they want you to leave and they refuse, he can call the sheriff's department, and as long as he's here, they can escort the person
Or
on.
my designee.
But if it's well, this is an example. But if it's after hours and somebody's there, then the sheriff's department can't act independently. Is that, in my understanding?
It's well, not just after hours, it could be, let's just say it's a staff person who probably doesn't have authority to decide who can and cannot be on the property. They call the sheriff's department. Now we have a question, if they're charged with trespassing, was the receptionist authorized to ask the person to leave? What this does is it gives the sheriff's department the authority to, we basically deputize them 24/7 and give them authority to ask people to leave our property, and if people.
So they would be exercising their own judgment on whether or not the secretary has a right to ask them to leave.
Well, they would need to exercise, then it wouldn't
The
matter.
person that's here, they would exercise their judgment whether the person's authorized to be here.
Right, with that, what it does is it authorizes the sheriff's department to decide. The sheriff's department can independently say, you know, sir, I'm asking you to leave, and if they refuse, it isn't just for local government, any business can do the same thing, any business could designate the sheriff's department. If we pass this ordinance, what you do is, if you're a business owner, you file a written authorization with the sheriff's department, and then what that business owner has done is authorize the sheriff's department to require people to leave the property.
Where would this fit in our code of ordinances? It sounds like a minor question, but I started trying to decide, do we have similar citations of state authorities sort of generically? Because this is not zoning, it's not subdividing, it's not taxation, it's not a lot of things, but it is something, and I noticed you didn't designate it, and that's fine. I'm not.
I would put it under law enforcement, chapter 38.
Under law enforcement, okay.
Yeah, I'd put it under 38, law enforcement.
Now, if individual property owners want to designate the sheriff, does that mean the sheriff then needs to keep track of 35 or 85 properties and say, yeah, these are, you asked to leave and these not?
How the sheriff would track it, I don't know. This came up from a specific incident here on our property that the sheriff's department wasn't sure they had authority to ask the person to leave. So that's what prompted this, was a discussion with the sheriff's, with Mark Amos, Commonwealth's attorney, folks were there, and this was a recommended ordinance from the Commonwealth and from the sheriff's office.
But if, let's say, somebody is on somebody's property today and they ask them to leave, but they have not filled out this form, they could still ask the sheriff to come and ask them to remove it?
Sure.
Because they are there personally and able to do that.
Right, if you come to my house, I can clearly ask you to leave and it's trespassing. If my brother's there and he asks you to leave, he probably doesn't have that authority. And so it's that, you know, I think if you're putting it in a simplistic description like that, it's the same in a business level. You know, when we go to court, when the Commonwealth's attorney goes to court and they've got to prove that the person was actually trespassing, the first thing they've got to establish is they didn't have a lawful right to remain there. And then it becomes a question of whether whoever asked them to leave lawfully had the authority to ask them to leave. And so what this does is it circumvents that by allowing us or anyone else to designate the sheriff.
I'm just
But it would
thinking-
also allow the sheriff's department to, for instance, if they're there at 2 o'clock in the morning and there's somebody there, and that person doesn't have a good reason, then the sheriff's department would be able to ask them to leave.
Bingo,
Correct.
bingo.
And,
But only on properties that have been designated as such.
Right.
and it's
It would
very
be up to us
easy,
as the property owner.
it's very easy for them to track it because they have notes for, they can put notes in for every property in the county.
Okay,
And dispatch would advise them or send it through on their CAD. Those notes would be in there, so they would be aware of it before they got on the scene.
okay, I'm just saying,
Right.
is the business of keeping track of every individual property owner that wants to give the sheriff that authority.
Well, and I'm assuming if a deputy's out cruising and if he knows there's something suspicious, he can call in immediately and
Right.
find out.
Yeah, it's no different than the E911, information system.
Okay, all right. So if he sees something, somebody prowling around the house or something like that, then he can ask and the system would then say, yeah, you have authority on that property.
The town of Orange already has this ordinance, and the chief for the town police said a large percentage of the businesses have authorized them.
Okay,
Yeah, so I was gonna say, I think most frequently this is used when you have somebody who's a property owner of, say, a shopping center. The owner owns the shopping center. What we frequently run into, or we used to when the local shopping center was in the county before it was annexed, was we would have a number of young folks that would hang out in that shopping center, and all various numbers of things would happen. And that shopping center owner is allowed to say, look, after hours, these folks are not allowed to be here. They put the sign up, and then we show up 2 in the morning, and these young folks are there doing what they're not supposed to do. We can show up, and if they're not breaking the law, say, you need to leave the property, and if they don't, they're trespassing.
Okay.
That's generally
I got
when it gets used.
I got it, okay.
So I think this is something that you've considered, you and the sheriff's department have considered and would see as a tool that would be useful to you.
Yes, sir.
So if there's no other questions, the questions today, I'm sorry.
This starts out saying trespass after having been forbidden to do so. Tell me how that works. Is there sort of a, 2 strikes you're out kind of thing? Or is this first incident, or how does this, I'm a little confused by that label. Maybe the label's not
We're
material,
using the sheriff description of the shopping center. The kids are hanging out at 2 in the morning. Sheriff deputy pulls up and says, you need to leave. And they say, we're not leaving. They have now been forbidden to be there.
Okay.
And now, from that moment forward, it's trespassing.
Okay, all right.
So it's one incident can be.
Right.
Yeah,
It's-
that-
It's once you've been instructed, once you've been told you can't be here, once you remain, you're trespassing.
So it's immediately following that,
Yes.
then, okay, all right.
One question I have, Lord God, run on sentence here, is from the very beginning, we read on down to, about the 7th or 8th line, or if any person, whether he is the owner, tenant, or otherwise entitled to use of such land, buildings, or premises, goes upon or remains upon such land, building, or premises after having been prohibited from doing so by a court of competent jurisdiction by order issued, what does that mean? It sounds like I get thrown off my own damn property.
If the court wants you to.
Well, I'm sure that all these numbers mean something, but to me, it just meant, okay, you're gone, but I own it, too bad. I don't understand.
It's referencing state code sections. This is actually literally pulled straight from state code. It's saying if you were prohibited from being on the property based on one of these other code sections, this doesn't trump that, change that, modify that. So if you've been prohibited based on any one of these other 9 or 10 code provisions, these are all criminal code provisions, and so if you've got a protective order that says you can't be there,
Okay.
nothing in the rest of this ordinance trumps that protective order that says you can't be there,
All right.
whether you own it or
All I
don't.
saw was a bunch of numbers, and that sentence is basically a whole paragraph, so it's.
That's why we have so many lawyers in this country, because they're the only ones that can understand this.
This was done by the General Assembly, we just,
And most of them are lawyers.
not anymore.
Yeah, not-
Anymore, that
That's
is
the
true.
the problem is because there aren't enough lawyers, they draft really crummy stuff sometimes.
Yes, they do.
Well, what this is saying is this does apply to, this could apply to someone who, was an owner if he's been forbidden
Right.
otherwise.
Right, that's, yeah, exactly, that
Yeah.
if you've got some kind of other court order out there,
Mm-hmm.
even if you
If your partner's gotten a
protective
protective
order.
order, then it applies to you.
What about the relationship between the town police and the sheriff? Does this get in the way, I mean, the example I'm thinking about is the building we're in, I suppose is actually owned by the county. The parking lot on the other side of those walls is, my understanding is owned by the town. Is there a jurisdictional issue?
Well, part of it is. Part of it's owned by the county, part of it's owned by the store owners, and then part of it's owned by the.
Yeah, so it's owned by a number of different entities.
But I guess that makes my question even,
Even better?
yeah, even more better is somebody with,
I mean, does that mean if you go,
yeah, that's,
now I'm
right.
not,
yeah, do you have to say, but if you move over there, that's
Well,
parking
I
spot.
believe the sheriff's department's got jurisdiction over the whole county, don't you?
Yes, sir, we
Yeah.
have jurisdiction inside the county,
Yeah.
but we
Okay.
just don't exercise it generally.
But this would still require the town to say, we let you guys, the town would still have to do the same thing we're doing
So there
in
could
the
be a,
parking lot.
in
there
the
could be
parking lot.
something,
Yeah,
okay, all right.
but the town, once again, this came out of a meeting with the
Understand, yeah,
town
okay.
police and the Commonwealth.
So you're expecting the town to provide that same kind of authority? to
Yeah,
the sheriff?
town was the one pushing us to do this. I think they'd like for us to have the same enforcement authority they have, so they can rely on the sheriff's department.
That's not what I got from it.
That's what I got.
I think they were trying to give us some instruction on the county building itself, because I actually took a picture of their own sign that's in the parking lot and showed it to them, so.
Does anybody know which parking spaces are owned by which entity?
Yeah, it's fairly,
Do we-
fairly clear
that would-
cut.
That surprised me.
Particularly some of them.
Yes, that's why the whole row next to the building here is labeled the way it is, because, those are all privately owned.
Yeah, they have enough parking places. They'll never have that many customers in there.
But it's
I
their
remember
property.
at one time, when we were arguing about rezoning for the town sewer plant, the mayor at the time talking about excluding all of the county
Yes.
employees from the parking lot.
I remember.
Just that parking lot has
about
been
that.
quite a bone of contention.
Yeah, it has been, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess the action that we would take if we choose to proceed is to move this on into the public hearing process.
Right, advertise, authorize us to advertise it and put it on the
Does
agenda.
anybody want to make that
So moved.
motion?
Right.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. So the question is, do we move to, this says what, October 9th? Is that an 8 or a 9th? Is that our wish to move it to public hearing on that?
I added that note there at the bottom. The county attorney has this ordinance and another ordinance to present following this, with the first available date of October 9th, public hearing. Later on the agenda, you also have a calendar item for a planning and zoning text amendment that could potentially be that evening, in addition to the short-term rental ordinance on the regular meeting, so.
Well, I mean, if
Those
either
are
of
the
these
four.
elicit any comment from the public, I'd be shocked, beyond shocked, so.
And we can schedule them all for the same evening, or we can divide them up however you choose.
Can we roll all of that into a single announcement?
Yes, we can do all of them in one public hearing ad.
I see, I'd be okay with that. We might have to stay here for a little bit longer that evening, but I don't envision this being a.
Let's get it done.
Yeah. So, we want to authorize advertisement for October 9th public hearing? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. All
So this doesn't go through this doesn't go through the planning commission, this,
No.
Okay. All right. Item 2B.
All right, 2B also comes in directly from the sheriff's department. We have at least one property owner who his fence is in extreme disrepair and his cows constantly roam upon the county roads. And currently, our ordinance for allowing your animals to run at large is $100 fine. And basically, the animal control officer told me the property owner has the attitude the fine is cheaper than fixing the fence. So, this ordinance would actually change the maximum fine to what state law allows. Ours is at $100, state law allows $250. And so really all I'm doing here is changing the ordinance, taking out the dollar figure and just saying it's the maximum allowed by state law, which is $250 per incident. The other thing I did instruct the animal control officer, I think each cow is a separate incident. They were charging them for one incident, and I said, I actually think we should charge the cows individually as running at large. But this really is just changing the ordinance to say that the maximum fine can be what state code allows, which is currently $250.
With this ordinance, the cats at the landfill, do we own them legally?
Cats?
Cats.
I don't know if it's possible to own cats.
Well, we have quite a large
does the
collection of
Dillon
them.
rule allow a county to own that?
Because I can see the county getting a very large fine for these cats running at large and getting stuck under people's tires.
I don't
when they're
think
trying to get
cats
a
are
landfill.
part of
Yeah,
this.
they're not on the list.
You're
No,
trying to-
it's
you're trying to hijack the
livestock
thread.
only.
Yes, I am. Okay, thank you.
We don't even have
If
dogs
you'd like
out
some
there.
more, I've got some up at where we were.
I guess I have a question as to when this applies. I mean, it happens frequently in a storm, and it's gonna happen probably starting in 2 days from now. Trees fall on fences, and whatever number of animals happens to be behind that fence, when the first one goes across the fence that was taken out by the tree, they all will follow. And that one-time occurrence needs to be treated differently than someone who refuses to fix a chronic problem. And I just wanna make sure that our ordinance language can differentiate between the two, and maybe it does, cause
I think subsection C addresses that.
it says after having been notified. Well,
So if your cows get out and the sheriff's department calls you and says, hey, your cows are out and running around, and you say, well, that's nice, the game's not over yet, and I'm gonna watch the second half, you probably are now violating this ordinance. If however you are taking steps towards rectifying the situation,
If you say, I'll get right on it and finish watching the game and then go get them.
well, that'd be better.
Probably okay.
This-
well,
And
my only question is, it says, after having been notified by an officer. And I'm just wondering, is that tight enough language for everybody to understand what the rules of the game are?
Well, I mean, part of it's gonna be whether we have common sense folks working in the sheriff's department, but I think.
Oh, well, we need to work on this language. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I think enforcement of any law requires common
Right.
sense.
Here's how they're interpreting it now, because you notice that's not in red, that's the current language.
Yeah, I know it is.
The way they're doing this now is, and with this particular property, they keep telling, look, your fence is busted here, you got this down here, and they're actually, they have put the property owner on notice repeatedly, you need to fix your fence.
Well, isn't there and maybe it's no longer exists, but at one time, as I recall, there was a separate set of laws maybe, for fences that bordered state roads. It requires a separate standard of quality of fence in order to prevent what we're talking about here. I don't know if that still exists or not, but there were it was a different set of rules because of the different safety issues associated with that. I mean,
Well, where this is tricky anyway is whether, when you have, in Virginia, the difference between fence in and fence out jurisdictions.
right,
And I mean, and if you're a fence out, we pretend, you know, that there's, doesn't even have to be a fence.
right.
So, but there's a separate set of rules for beside, and that's what we're operating on because I believe we're fence out. And so, but there's also a state code provision that says even if you're a fence out, you can still have an ordinance that prohibits animals running at large, which is what this is, on the roads.
This doesn't say about the roads, this is within the
Within
boundaries of
roads.
the county.
But I think this addresses, I think that code section deals with roads. I know that's where we're enforcing it. But I do know there's some difference in when you're next to a state road. And that's
I
where-
seem to recall that, but I,
How about if he's running into the next neighbor's flower garden or something?
I think
Well, that's trespass then, right?
I think we're fence out. I don't think that's trespass.
I thought we were fenced in.
Or maybe we're fenced in. I don't know.
thought
get
we
the
were
photo.
because
I
of the
think we are.
hogs.
There was
Well, if
a
we're fenced
murder
in, then it's trespass.
that took place some years ago in a county not too far from here over the fence in, fence out rules.
If we're fenced in, I can't remember. I haven't looked, I'll be honest. If we're
Well-
fenced in, then it becomes a trespass anywhere. Yeah.
This is one I think we want to be
Really careful.
really careful about. And if the state rules are different, for example, for highways boundaries, then we should probably speak to that. Because it really is different than somebody's cows or horses or whatever going into the neighbor's flower bed. I mean, that's almost a civil matter that needs to be settled with trespassing and other kind of thing. My only concern is the range of possibilities here is fairly broad. And at the extreme end is the one that you're talking about as the reference case. And we probably should have some fairly powerful tools to address that. But not everybody needs to be hit with that same situation.
Well, we could make this apply only to running at large on public roads if the.
Well, I don't know that that's the answer either. I need a little bit of time, I think, to sort of figure this out. Because I don't think we want to, I'm concerned about saying running at large anywhere and within the boundaries of the county or whatever the words are that are used, which is current language. I mean, I acknowledge that's not, this is as it exists
But I think
today.
when you say such, having been notified by an officer, continue to run at large. I mean, I think that's the provision that says, okay, if your cow gets into the neighbor's garden and tromps it all the heck, and the sheriff says you need to get him back, okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
There's
because-
no trespass.
But what's gonna happen is the neighbor is gonna use this against the animal owner and say,
No, because it's gotta be an officer of the law. that says-
I'm
they're
not,
gonna call the sheriff and say, you need to come and arrest my neighbor because his turkey.
Well, remember, the law's there. It's
Turkeys
been there
don't
for
go.
years. All we're doing is changing the
I don't
fine.
think he can do that. If the sheriff's deputy comes down and says, get your cow out of the property, and the guy moves his cow off, then there's no trespass. There's still a civil action.
Oh, yeah.
But the trespass is gone.
This is not a new ordinance. This has been on the books for a long time, so we apparently haven't had a problem
all
with
you're
it.
doing is raising the maximum fine and saying, and making it clear that each animal is deemed a separate violation. It's the only thing you're doing.
Well, the separate animal was just, yes. I added the separate animal as a violation and just making this fine so the judge can set it up to the maximum state law allows.
I mean, the reality is that, Jim, I understand your concern, but I don't think that the sheriff's department is gonna go out, tell somebody his cows are out, go out, wait 15 minutes, and come back and say, well, you haven't got them all corralled yet, so we're gonna hit you with a fine. If they did, I think any of the judges we have would probably
Yeah.
ask them what their problem was and throw it out of court, because that's just not a reasonable standard.
This is really one particular property owner who's a repeat offender who basically is like, I'll pay the fine, it's cheaper than fixing the fencing.
And has he been paying the fine?
Yeah, according to the animal control officer, he just pays the fine.
Well, maybe we
And in
should leave
fact,
it and keep
my
collecting
understanding is
them.
our staff have actually, the animal control folks have had to get his cows back into his pasture for him.
Yeah.
So he may consider that a bargain.
I mean, that, yeah, that's not cool. I think we ought to start, every time his cows get out, we ought to just corral them and
Send them to the
give them to,
slaughterhouse.
the,
Take possession.
Hunters for the Hungry, say, here.
I don't know, I think, I like the way it's worded. You're basically, you've got to basically tell the sheriff no, before you're in this situation.
I think you have to do what this guy we're talking about is doing before anything is gonna happen to you. And sure, there's probably gonna be a neighbor somewhere along, but those neighbors already do that. I mean,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and just because you've got that,
But when my neighbor's cows get over my property, I call up my neighbor and say, hey, your cows are on my property. And he comes over and gets them.
Yeah, my neighbors and I do that all the time. Your cows are my cows, and you need to change the color tags you use, so we know. But I'm just saying, if you
I actually have more complaints about chickens than I do about cows. I have people complaining about people's chickens getting in their yard and tearing up their
I didn't
flowers.
see chickens on the list.
No, chickens are not in here.
We can pass a chicken ordinance though, if we
No,
want.
Chickens get in the yard, that's tomorrow's dinner.
Or we can send them to puppy prison down to the animal shelter and charge more every time you wanna come get them back.
All right, don't we have something else to cover?
Yeah, we do.
So,
Okay,
are we ready for this to show up on the agenda?
well,
I would make a
I'm listening for a
motion
motion, okay? I hear a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. And the same question, do we want to put this on, or advertise for October 9th?
Yes, that's what my motion said.
Okay, all right. It's all there then. Okay.
Chinese restaurant to do what you can.
Exactly.
All right, last item for the work session, the update on the body camera
I didn't
project.
hear that and I didn't laugh.
And that's pretty much what I said.
Good evening, everybody. First, I have to correct, I have a typo that I was told about. We weren't completing improvements to the system.
Let the record minutes
We were completing
show. You had a typo.
improvements to the system, so we did complete improvements. So that should be an L in there. Whose USB is this, by the way?
It's ours.
It's yours?
Do you need to take it out?
Yes, can I? So I had talked to a couple of board members, who had talked about getting an update on the camera system. And, so I thought that, this would be a good time to do so and answer any questions that you might have. How about that? So we began our camera system in September of 2015, and I believe it was September 20th, so we're almost 3 years into the program as it exists today. And at the time we started it, we purchased 26 body cams. We already had 6 to 8 car cameras in that were a watch guard as well. We purchased 2 servers. One of the servers, both servers were identical. They were both 26 terabytes large. We planned it so they would be large enough to handle everything. One was used as a backup and is currently used as a backup. The other one is actually housing the software that manages our video, and it's also housing our video as well. At the time that we started this, every field unit was issued a body camera. That included myself, our uniform captain, Jason Smith. The sheriff does not wear a camera as a political official, but everybody else did. So our civil process servers, our animal control officers, we did not have them in the courthouse because there is a court of records and circuit court, and we don't want to be a part of that. So we kept the body cameras out of there. And in the beginning of this process, we approached Orange County Public Schools and asked them to draft a MOU with us for the use of the body cams. We were put off for a little while because they kept expecting Richmond to come up with one. And as we all know, Richmond they run on their own timetable and they're not really worried about ours. Finally, when we did get direction from Richmond, they basically said, well, you all are a locality, you all can work amongst yourselves and come up with something. So that's ultimately what we did, and we now have an MOU with the schools that covers SROs, that also covers body camera usage by the sheriff's office in the school systems, and it's mutually agreed upon. So all of our school resource officers now also carry body cams. They are all used when we are using our police powers, so we all wear them at different times. You'll notice my camera that's on is green, it is not red, that means I'm not recording. The red light is what determines that. We can set them in covert mode so that the lights are out and you can't see whether they're recording or not. I choose not to do that because at night when it's in covert, you can't read the top of the screen to see what's going on, and I prefer to be able to read mine, so I leave the light on. Everybody uses them. Everybody every day has to create a test recording.
When you say everybody, you talking about just the uniformed officers, or?
Everybody who's assigned a body camera, so it's mostly uniformed officers, yes, sir. The investigators do not have them assigned. I spent 15 years in investigations. They probably could. We have them available, so there are occasions when the investigators want to have a body cam with them. When they do, they have to follow the body cam policy. That's how it works. They've been assigned one even if it's for that brief time, and they must follow the policy. So if they use their police powers, they have to report. Otherwise, they don't. We have since rolled in some other things that we've been dealing with on a different level, because we've actually taken this program as we started September 2015, and we've improved upon it. We've done so with budgetary money that you all have granted us through the budget system. We've never come back and asked for any extra. So everything that we've done with monies that we have available to us through our budget, and when we realize savings of one form or another in a number of different lines, we're able to do so. The policy, we do not individually cover what videos are removed from the server or whatnot. That is all covered by the software. We give them the rules, and the rules tell us what it is. Now, we have changed 2 of those since we began it. One was we were maintaining test recordings for 30 days. Every test recording is a minute long. It doesn't take up a lot of space, it really doesn't. But when you look, we're talking about thousands of video recordings when you keep them for 30 days. So we've now changed it back to 2 weeks. We only really need them for 1 day, honestly. Because every officer at the end of their shift is required to go to the sheriff's office, download their video, and they have to watch the first video and the last video to determine that it in fact is recording audio and that the video is acceptable. All of our cameras, the little camera that's on the face of it moves up and down, so you can change how it looks. So every once in a while you'll bump your camera and your video camera shoots up in the ceiling and you get nobody's face when you make your recording. You can hear everything, but you can't see anything. So you've got to keep on top of that so you can make sure that you are getting what it is that you're supposed to be collecting. The deputies create the videos when they use their police powers. They also create a test recording every day. They watch them at the end of the shift to make sure they're right. They cannot watch each other's videos. So essentially how our system works is if I'm a deputy sheriff, I go to a crime scene and I make a recording. The only people that are allowed to see that recording are myself, my supervisors. That's it. Nobody else is able to. So one deputy can't look at another deputy's video recordings. We can, however, change that so that if we create a case, so if all of us were deputies and we all went to a crime scene together, we're all gonna have different information that we've collected. We can actually go into the software, we can create a case with a case number that we've assigned to that particular investigation, and then we can give different caseworkers different access to the video that's contained within that case. So we do that with investigators mostly. We go to a burglary, we have 2 road deputies that respond to it for a reason. Investigator shows up later. We'll make the investigator a caseworker, so then the investigator can go and look at those deputies' videos. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to.
But you can control all of that local, I mean, you don't have to,
Yes, sir.
it's not some off-site.
No, sir, it's all completely controlled by us. Once we create the case, it maintains the video and locks it down until we delete the case. Right now, I think in here I said we have 270 cases. Now, I'm sure we have more since I created this document. And we have not deleted any of those, cause right now, we've got 8 terabytes of space we haven't used, and we're almost to our maximum number of cameras. So I overbuilt the servers because I was afraid to come up short. As it is, we're probably sitting pretty close to where we would wanna be, where we'd have some extra. And the servers that we bought, we can add, hard drives to, so we can increase our capacity in the server as it is. Our servers have 5-year warranties, and we're on year 3. We're about finished with 3, so we're doing pretty good, for where we're at now. I will say for, what we've done, we were probably one of the first, sheriff's offices in central Virginia to actually equip all of our field officers with body cams. So it wasn't a partial rollout and then we increased it, we rolled it out to everybody all at one time. We're one of the first ones that have done that. I've been contacted by Frederick County, Maryland, I've been contacted by, Charleston, West Virginia. Spotsylvania County has come up and looked at our system. So we've had a number of people come up and actually look at our system and see what it does and how it works when they're actually looking at doing their own. So I took that as a compliment, honestly, on what we've been able to do. So what we've actually increased that to at this point, we have 17 patrol units. I have 3 spare patrol cars, that we use way too much sometimes. We wanna make sure we have video in all of them. So right now, we've got 16 cameras or 17 cameras we will have out after these new cars come in. All of the in-car cameras now are wirelessly downloading video into this system. The deputies don't have a say in it one way or the other. When they pull into our parking lot, it automatically dumps the videos into the servers, so they have no control over it. With our body cams, in the beginning of this process, we had a USB dock. We plugged it into a client computer in the patrol room, so you could do 1 camera dump at a time, and it was basically kept held up by whatever speed we had in the USB cord that ran between the dock and the computer. Then the computer would send the video onto the server, so it was a 2-step system. We had a number of problems with that. As you can imagine, we were one of the first ones to roll out the Vista body cam for WatchGuard, and there's always bugs attached with the new system. So we had a number of times when we had videos that would get locked up for a weekend, deputies weren't able to review videos, and we had to call WatchGuard to get it unblocked and sent on. We since invested money in a transfer station where we can now dump 8 cameras at the same time. Every single one of those spots in a transfer station has its own IP address. So every time you dump a camera in it, it's going immediately from the camera to the server. There's no computer in between anymore. And it stopped all of our issues with body camera dumps into the system as it was. That cost a little bit of money, but honestly, for my peace of mind, it was well worth it. I don't know how y'all feel about that, but I was getting phone calls late at night where deputies weren't able to watch their videos, and I was going in and, well, WatchGuard's not available, I'm the guy that's gotta fix it. So this actually saved me a lot of time coming out and managing the video that we had, that we did. We have, in the beginning, our cameras that we bought, they have all since been replaced by WatchGuard. They had bugs in the system. We were reporting them just as quickly as everybody else. About 6 months into the process, WatchGuard contacted us and they replaced every body cam we had at no cost. They sent us a whole box of them, and then we collected the old ones and we sent them a whole box back. So we ended up with an improved version of the body cam as it is now. Let me see, we've done a number of different things, so of course we've done that. I've actually increased our body cams to 28, so I have 2 spares. That's so that when a body camera breaks, I don't have an officer without a body cam, or I'm giving mine up in order for them to have one. I've got 2 spares, so I can instantly assign them a new camera. It doesn't matter what camera they have, I assign it to the name is what connects with the video. So it doesn't matter what camera they have, they can still watch the video that's in it. So I've got 2 extras that I bought. Our interview room cameras before the body cam system was one that was installed by Clear Communication, probably back in 2013. One of the biggest pitfalls in that system was it recorded in 10-minute increments. So if you interrogated somebody over 60 minutes and you went to a jury trial, you had to play 6 different files. for a jury, and you had to keep on getting up and hitting play, and it would pick up where it left off, and, that really didn't work the best. Since we went to this, we've actually installed an interview room camera that is also a WatchGuard camera. That interview room camera is the same system as what we're using in the cars, but a different camera attached to the system. So the deputies know how to use the in-car cameras, they know how to use the interview room camera. That contains the video in its entirety. So if it's 10 minutes or it's 4 hours, it's gonna contain all the video in one file. That video file is then able to be viewed by the officer that created it. The officers can log in and out of the interview room so that their video is only seen by them. If they don't log in and it's unknown, then they can't watch it at all. It ends up as an unknown, and a supervisor has to go in and assign it to an officer's name so they can view the video. And those videos are exported in their entirety in one file. So now it's push play once and it plays the entire interview. One of the improvements that came with that system was we also put some money into a thing called Watch Commander. So our servers are connected to our sheriff's office network. The interview room camera is also connected into the sheriff's office network, so that once upon a time, and for those of you that have been to our office, the old interview room, we had that little side one, and you had the one-way mirror that sat on the one side, and you have to sit on that side.
I've
and
never
watch
been
it.
to your interview room. I see Jim nodding, but I've never been to your interview room.
I spend a lot of time over there.
Some people have been in the Citizen Police Academy as well, have been in there and seen it, gotten the tour and seen what it was like, and that's the way it used to be. Now, the way it is, we are able to view a live interview that's taking place at any computer within our network. So you can sit at any desk inside the sheriff's office network, log into Watch Commander, and you can watch a live interview. If the interview's being recorded, you can hear audio. If it's not being recorded, you can see the picture, but you can't hear any audio.
So that doesn't have the same restrictions like the body cam stuff. Anybody can then look at that from any of your deputies.
In Watch Commander, yes.
Okay.
But you have to have access to that.
But you have to have a login for that. So as deputies come and go, they're entered in the system and then they're removed from the system. As long as they're a current deputy sheriff in our office, they're able to watch an interview in progress.
Okay, all right.
Which honestly is part of the training process that we go through.
Okay.
So it's actually a pretty good way for us to put a one-on-one interview of somebody in a crime that's occurring and have somebody else watch it from the outside. We've actually had some outside jurisdictions do interviews in our interview room so they can watch in a Watch Commander to see what's going on live. So that has been a real improvement for us to the system that we're using. One of the other improvements that we've done, so in the beginning of this, I think we talked about disclosure of video that we were using. And we've had a few times where we've made the video available to people that were defendants in cases. I particularly had one with a gentleman who he was part of a 2-car stop. That doesn't happen very often, but there was 2 cars that were speeding in the school zone at Locust Grove Elementary School. And when they went through, the officer went to stop one and caught the other one speeding as he was spinning around to catch him, and he stopped both cars. The front person prepaid, the back person did not, and he actually wanted to fight the ticket when it went to court, and so he asked for a copy of the video. We allowed him to come into the office, we let him watch the video, but we had to trim it because he doesn't have the right to the personal information of the person from the first stop. So we had to cut the video so he could see what that was, and obviously there was video that was missing from it. We then made the entire video available to him in court, and the deputy could play it when he went to court with it. Now, the interesting caveat with that was, when a gentleman called me to watch the video to start with, he told me that the school lights were not on in the zone. He was positive of it, and that's the way it is. Guarantee that wasn't the case, and he made up a time and a day to come and see me, and I was gonna let him watch the video at my desk. And as I was prepping the video, it was obvious that the school lights were on. He just missed it. And so when he came into my office to watch the video, he said, "Now I know those lights weren't on, and when you see the officer turn and you can see the lights blinking in the school zone," he said, "Well, I've got another issue." That wasn't the only issue. He didn't he thought that the officer had said some things that the officer hadn't said. We had another situation where we had a deputy respond to a 911 hang-up. Those are, for us, a little bit troublesome, because you never know what you're gonna get to when you go to them. You don't know if it's intended or not. In this case, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. It was at the residence of somebody that's fairly well off. The deputy got to the residence, there's one little light on. Deputy walked by a bank of windows with no curtains on them, didn't see anybody inside, went to what appeared to be the door that was used for entry and knocked on the door for the gentleman to come out. He was angry and his wife was angry because the deputy was there checking on them at a 911 hang-up. They hadn't called 911. This all happened when Nikki Tidy was here. I ended up talking to that gentleman. I sent him to talk to Nikki. And as it turns out, if there's noise on your telephone line and the noise is generating a number, it can actually get a 911 dial on a noisy line and come in and they don't realize it. And he had been complaining about a noisy line for a while. So when he came into the office, he swore, I've known this man for 25, 28 years. He came in and swore up and down the deputy was aggressive, he was banging on the door like it was a sledgehammer, the deputy was completely rude. I watched the video, the deputy literally walked up to the door and went, just like that. And he said, oh no, that didn't happen, it was much louder than that, I'm telling you, that's not what happened. That deputy was really aggressive. He went home. He had his wife go out, knock on the door, and it sounded like the deputy did when the wife was knocking on the door. And he said, oh, guess what? You're right. Your camera was right. He actually wasn't all that aggressive. It's the way he took it because it was 1 o'clock in the morning and he wasn't expecting a deputy at the door. So the cameras have been pretty useful in those things. They've certainly been useful in court as well. I've got a USB in my hand. So one of the things that we've been doing just to try is a foolproof system. I've purchased a number of these USBs using grant money, using some of our police supplies money. And every time that we do a court case that's going to court, we dump the videos on one of these, we take them to the Commonwealth's attorney's office, we dump the video on their hard drive, and then we take these back and dump them in a case file. So now we've got them in two places. We've got them on a server that's got some retention stuff going on, and it's got some backup as well, and we also have it on this just in case something catastrophic happens as well. So we did manage to do that. I did want to show you, we now have the ability to redact video. So before it was trimming video, so if it was like in that case of the double stop, we had to cut out the first piece of the deputy going to the first car, show the second piece of them going to the second car, cut out the tickets for the first lady, leave the tickets for the guy, cut out that, so we had to do a lot of that. In this case now, we have the ability to redact. So I'm going to show you a redacted video, hopefully. I won't show you the whole thing. Hopefully you can hear.
Hey, how you doing, sir? Good. I'm Deputy Barrett Sheriff's Office. The reason I'm stopping your speed when you're passing that
See the
vehicle there,
fuzzed out
I mean, you got a little,
face.
I mean, you got
Now
a
you're gonna
reckless range.
you're gonna notice you can
Yeah.
see where his face is fuzzed
So,
out.
do you have any
Now you got a
emergencies or
fuzz in the
anything like that, or
windshield.
you
It's
just trying
because
to
there's
get
a
around,
glare
or-
in the windshield, and the computer's picking up the face in the windshield and putting a
Alright, it
fuzz
happens. I
over
can understand
over
that.
the face.
I am gonna need your driver's registration, driver's license registration, yeah.
You notice the fuzz is moving in the windshield still.
So the computer automatically tracks that face.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the barrel one.
How the system works
So
for
no
us.
emergencies, just try to go to girlfriend's house?
Well, yeah, no, sir, I can't tell you there's an emergency.
Okay, I understand. Alright, just bear with me a few minutes, okay?
We didn't cut out the deputy's license plate. That's one of our unmarked cars. So anyway, what we're able to do is we're able to, as we go through the video, you'll mark that gentleman's face one time with a box, and then you choose what's going to cover it. The server that runs the system for us has 20 cores in it. A normal system has 7 cores, not 7 has 7 cores. This is 20 cores. So when you do it and you process it, the computer finds that face everywhere in it, and it puts that fuzz over top of it. So you don't have to do it for the entire video. You're doing it pretty quick. I didn't get to a point in this, but we can actually beep out audio. So if we ask this gentleman his date of birth or social security number, we can beep out that audio so nobody can hear it. So now we can provide video to folks that actually doesn't have any personal identifying information in it. This is a traffic stop. It's not a crime scene, and it's not a crime itself. So that makes it a little bit less on the scale of whether we would keep it or not. Because traditionally, we do not provide videos from criminal cases. We give them to Commonwealth's attorney, and she provides them where they need to go. Traffic stops, we'll make those available to the folks that are involved. So that's how Redactive works. So it is a separate server, but it does provide us with a method to deliver video that we're making to folks when they have a request that they're asking for, and legally we have a responsibility to provide it to them. So,
If you have a situation where there's a prosecution going on and the Commonwealth Attorney's got that, you retain that indefinitely then, or at least, or do you take it out of the server and put it in a case file or something?
it's in both places.
Okay.
When we create a case in the server, the case stays until we delete it. So at this point, we've got 8 terabytes, we have 270 cases, we have 14,300 videos a day is what we're managing.
Now, you say that's what's on the system. That's not how many you're collecting a day.
No, that's how many we're maintaining, because every day, some are dropped and
Okay.
some are added.
So you're managing, okay, all right, I got
Yep.
it.
And so what happens with the cases is, so we go to a larceny and we collect, it's a crime scene, that's video we would save. So we're creating a case, we're putting the videos in it that are attached, that keeps it and preserves it on the server. But then we're also making a copy of it, putting it on a USB, and it's going in a hard file. So we actually have it in 2 locations. We provide that video to the Commonwealth's attorney, and then she gives it out where it needs to go legally when we're dealing with the case
Whether the
itself.
defendant needs it or not.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, absolutely. It's amazing, I didn't realize how many videos, when you go in and you look, 14,300 videos is a lot, it really is. One of the things that we are able to do, so this was about body cams, the car cams actually have the ability for us, we'll use the videos, every time we get in a pursuit, we're doing pursuit evals, and making sure that they were done according to policy. We're using body cams for use of force as well. We have those that happen occasionally, but we're able to use the videos then to see what is going on and what is happening and what is not. One of the challenges that we've had with officers in the course of this is the cameras are set up so they see what is lit up at night, and they're not night vision cameras. So sometimes you got to remind deputies you got to use a flashlight in order to light things up for the camera to see. So we'll have a few videos where it's dark and you can't see. We have had a number of video body cameras that have been ripped off of officers' chests in the course of a resisting arrest. And the camera, we had one where the camera ended up in the woods, and it was still recording. So the officer collected the guy, took him to the magistrate, put him into jail, and then got our bloodhound out, and the bloodhound went back and searched the area and found the camera, and I had like 50 minutes of the stars and the moon shining and the leaves blowing. We found the camera afterwards. Then it was still connected to the plate, but the plate had been ripped off, which is one of the things, I had a few things in here I put where there are anticipated system improvements. One of those is they have a new, more powerful magnet set up for the mounts on your chest. So we're going to be getting those. I've actually placed the order, they're just not out yet in order to do that. The other one that we don't have with these right now that I do want to cover tonight before I quit is the body cams as they are now. When I take the video, I don't see it until I get back to the office, stick it in the dock, and it dumps. Until then, I don't see what the video looks like at all. The next version of these cameras has a Wi-Fi capability so that all my folks that have a smartphone can put an app on their smartphone, and they can now view videos that they're creating on their smartphone. what that gives us from a operations standpoint is, currently, when we do the video, we make the arrest, we go to the magistrate's office, we get a confession from somebody, say, we're telling the magistrate, we videotaped a confession from the guy, it's our words saying that it happened. If we get the Wi-Fi body cams, that's gonna give us the ability to play the video back for the magistrate live when we go in to do the video. And that is the next version. I have, I think, done a new request for CIP, so you'll all be seeing that coming up. But that's the main driving point behind the Wi-Fi camera. Other than that, I mean, we're almost out of time anyway. If you all have any questions, or if there's anything that you would like me to expound upon.
Well, a number of times you've mentioned the deputies and how they're using it. How would you characterize the overall reaction on the part of the deputies? I mean, is it a net positive? Is it a tool that they can't live without at this point? Or give us some idea of the.
So it's interesting because you wonder what public perception is. I can tell you all the deputies love having them. And when they don't have one, believe me, they're the first ones calling saying, hey, my camera's not working right, or, you know, there's something wrong with it. Because they've got no problems with what they do being recorded. They're all out here to do the right thing. If we hire the right folks, they're out here to do the right thing, and they don't much care whether they're being recorded or not. And when they don't have the cameras, they miss them. So absolutely, they all love them. They all want the system will work right. The older guys, look, guys like me, you're used to jumping out of a car and going to deal with stuff. You're not necessarily used to pushing a button before you run to deal with stuff. But all the new folks, it's standard equipment. That's what they're learning how to do when they get out of the police academy. It's the first thing they're introduced to. We're not having any problems with those. And even the old guys like me are remembering to turn the cameras on all the time now. So, but they love them.
What is the public's, your perception of it?
You know, honestly, we haven't had a lot of negative feedback about the public. I know a lot of the feedback that I've gotten from folks is very positive. You know, I think they feel like it gives that extra little bit of legitimacy to what we're doing. And I think that they're all pretty happy about it. Now, I will say, you know, certainly the cameras have had a positive, I think, effect on our interactions with folks that aren't happy to see us. Because when you walk up and you're talking to them and it's green and red and it's looking at them in the eye when you're up there, they realize they're being recorded and they're more likely to be a little more polite and a little more social than they would be if they're extremely upset.
Is
So,
it part of the protocol to remind a person that they're being recorded, or you?
no, sir.
You don't?
It's completely up to officers'
They can use it.
decision. We're in a one person state, so you can record as long as one person realizes that the recording's being made. That's a part of it. So the one party doesn't require us to do it. But you know what? A lot of the deputies are pretty savvy, and you know when somebody's giving you a hard time, sometimes reminding them of being recorded causes them to act much more appropriately and more civilly. So I can honestly say I believe the deputies are using the cameras and the recording as a way to help them in a situation. So,
Mike, what is you probably said this before, but what is it entirely up to the deputy, or is there a protocol for when you have to turn it on?
there is a protocol, and it's in policy. If you're using your police powers, you must record.
Okay.
And when in doubt, record, is what we tell them. So we get many recordings that probably we don't necessarily need to have, but the deputy believes that they're using their police powers. So, if they run up onto you on the sidewalk at the post office and you're just talking normally, they're not going to record that because they're not using it. But if you've been given as a suspicious person and we show up at the scene to interview you about it, believe me, the cameras are on. Absolutely.
Just one footnote on Mike's report. You notice the second last bullet about the internet access for the new public safety building will be a fiber connection. The amount of storage that is needed for this video is actually exponentially mind-boggling, because you got to retain this, and we're into terabytes now. How many terabytes?
Yes, sir. We're using 11 terabytes out of the 24 or out of the 22 we have available.
So the idea is that we would go to a cloud-based storage, which is secure, having our own servers, there's a little bit of a discussion of whether it's our own servers or it's cloud-based, but having the fiber connection is gonna be real.
Yeah, so that's gonna be the new thing. I mean, right now, we can't use that because our internet speed isn't fast enough for us to transfer video, even if we wanted to. So when a new public safety building goes up and we're connected by fiber, it opens up that possibility. Now, I can say, talking with our IT director, I think it behooves us to own our own video, and if we own our own video, it means we're owning our own servers. But things are changing, and they're changing rather dynamically. So when the new public safety building comes up, it's going to open up a new area for us to explore, and it'll give us another option potentially to decide what we are or aren't going to do with the video that we create.
I just wanted to make sure that was put out there. Thank you.
Okay.
All right,
Any
thank
other
you, Mike.
questions? Yeah, thanks, that's,
Very well presented.
Thank you.
and I will say that I recall when this proposition was being put forward by you guys, you were pioneering in a sense, and that taking the lead and stepping forward, and I think it's paying dividends.
We're pretty proud of our system right now, and it's nice when you get people that come from other places to come see what you're doing. We're not just following the leader sometimes. Sometimes we're leading the way. So that's kind of an important thing.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and after that, in a moment of silence in honor of Judy Carter. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we have several changes to the agenda. We're going to move item 3L to a separate action. We're deleting item 4E. Adding an item 7C, that is the local state of emergency declaration, and then renumbering, C becomes D and D becomes E. And then, adding a new E, which is the Barbersville Tower site location discussion. Those are the changes I have. Anyone else have others?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Motion approved as amended.
Second, all in favor say aye. Okay. So we have the consent agenda with the movement of the 2-minute items. Is there a motion?
So moved as amended.
Okay, moving second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then we have the approval of the August 14th work session and regular meeting minutes. Need a motion for
So
those?
moved.
Okay, a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
And one abstention. Okay. All right, special presentations and appearances. Mr. David.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, if you make your way forward, we have several, number of employees to be recognized, and several are here with us today. First, I'd like to call forward Joseph Fallon, a 5-year service award. He's a child care manager with our Office on Youth.
All right, thank you very much.
Next, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recognize Debbie Wareham, 5-year service award. She's a custodian with the Department of Public Works.
I saw her today on my way in.
And she's
Congratulations, and thank you.
known by everybody in this building for sure. And the last person here today is one I think everybody knows, given her nature of her duties. Karen Gibson is receiving a 10-year service award. She works tirelessly with our human resources. Mr. Chairman, employees that couldn't be with us today, but certainly want to recognize Ray Ellswick, 5-year service award, a landfill administrative assistant. Helen Scott, a 15-year service award, a collection attendant. Lillian Bowman, 15-year service award, a collection attendant. And Clarence Washington, 5-year service awards, a collection attendant. All right, that concludes our service awards, Mr. Chairman. Now we move into, let's see, why don't we go ahead and produce the resolutions of appreciation, and we'll do some introductions after that. Resolution of appreciation from Mr. Jay Billy. Jay.
Jay, come up, please. I'm gonna read all of it. So. You have to stand. A resolution of appreciation for Jay Billy. It's a lot to get through here, so bear with me. Help me out. Whereas Jay Billy has faithfully served the citizens of Orange County as a member of the Tourism Advisory Committee for 5 years, beginning his service in 2013, and was one of the inaugural members of the committee, serving most of the time as chair. And whereas the Tourism Advisory Committee was created to serve as an advisory, in an advisory capacity for the tourism community, to the tourism manager and the board of supervisors, making recommendations and developing long-range plans to further the county's tourism efforts and increase awareness and visitation. And whereas in keeping with the intended purpose, Jay Billy has made substantial contributions toward tourism efforts throughout the county and to the continued success and operation of the tourism department, giving selflessly of his time and talents. Whereas during his service, Jay Billy was instrumental in the development of the wedding tour, creation of the Inns at Montpelier, the creative implementation of the Simply Stunning tagline, the receipt of various grant funding, the development and launching of the first public-private tourism promotional video, and has been an integral part of the research related to short-term rentals. And, clear my throat, whereas, yeah, I think so. Whereas, whether it be attending the Tourism Advisory Committee meeting, presenting information to the Board of Supervisors, or advocating for the ends of the county, Jay Billy has at all times been regarded as a champion for and an integral part of Orange County's tourism industry, and has made an impact through his participation and involvement. Whereas while Jay Billy's service on the Tourism Advisory Committee officially began in 2013, he has arguably been a strong advocate for tourism-related initiatives in the county for many years, with contributions predating his committee service. Now, therefore be it resolved on this 11th day of September 2018 that the Orange County Board of Supervisors hereby extends its admiration and appreciation to Jay Billy for his service, passion, and dedication to the Tourism Advisory Committee and the longevity of the tourism industry in Orange County. Signed, James T. White, Chairman, Board of Supervisors, and congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you, sir.
There's no speech, right?
Yeah.
Speech I can only do, right? I can't do it in 3.
Mr. White, we've got one other resolution. Recognition
You're not done yet, Jim.
for the Orange Volunteer Fire Company.
Okay.
I know some members of the company are
Okay,
here.
great. Okay. The members that are here for the
Do you
Volunteer
want
Fire
them,
Company?
do you want them to come forward?
Yeah, sure. Come on up. That'll give me a chance to clear my throat a little bit. All right. Here we go again. Resolution of recognition for
2018 marked the 132nd annual conference. And whereas a portion of the annual conference includes a competition where about a dozen teams from fire agencies across Virginia can come together to compete for 8 different events that test the firefighters' teamwork, skill, and speed. Whereas first, second, and third place winners from each event are awarded team points, which are ultimately used to determine the overall event winner. Whereas during the August 2018 competition, the Orange Volunteer Fire Company placed in the top 3 in 6 out of the 8 events, finishing with 5 first place finishes for a total award of 28 points. Whereas this year's competition team was led by Coach Jimmy Fitch, and the team members include Willie Yancey, Will Brown, Brian Seal, Will Brockman, Dave Brown, Rick Jacobs, Tom Lillard, Larry Heiston, Matt Wilson, Greg Conley, W.A. Hoxton, Jake Kuntz, Danny Mallory, Mike Yancey, and Jason Morris. Whereas for the 15th year in a row, here's the amazing part, for the 15th year in a row, the Orange Volunteer Fire Company won the Virginia State Firefighters Association competition, bringing home the William Packett Memorial Award for having the most team points, earning them their 21st overall win. Pause on that for a second. Now therefore be it resolved on this 11th day of September 2018 that the Orange Board of Supervisors hereby recognizes the Orange Volunteer Fire Company and its competition team members for their 15th straight victory in the Virginia State Firefighter Association competition, for their sincere passion for firefighting, and for the distinguished service provided to the citizens of Orange County. Signed, James K. White, Chairman, Orange County Board of Supervisors. Congratulations. Some of us take that too much room. Yeah. You take up a lot of room, buddy. Yeah. Thank you, and congratulations. And pass along our congratulations. Okay. New business, I see.
Mr. Chairman, we have just 2 more items.
Introduction.
Oh, sorry, yeah, introductions.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call Dominique Curry forward. Dominique is, as she comes forward, is our Emergency Communications Center Director and started with us, I guess, 2 weeks ago. You can come over here. And so this is kind of the, you can come stand right here in front of the podium. Oh, in front of the podium.
We have to,
We wanna get your picture.
Oh, yeah, we have to get you on the
yeah,
camera.
there we go.
There you
There we
go.
go.
You can always tell a rookie, right?
Yeah.
But I'd like to introduce Dominique Curry. She's our ECC Director, started, I guess, 2 weeks ago.
August 27th.
Yeah, or yesterday, so, and is that staring at the front end of a hurricane.
Yeah, that's right.
So, this is just to welcome her here.
Welcome, and if you'd like to make any comments or,
Initiation under fire?
yeah, that's right.
Well,
How much rain are we gonna get? Have you, your
Well,
crystal ball told you that?
hopefully not too much, but it is looking like we have a big task ahead of us this weekend. I just wanted to say how excited I am to be a part of the Orange County community now, serving in the capacity of the Emergency Communications Center Director. I have spent the last couple weeks getting to know everyone and learning some of the systems and working with the stakeholders involved in emergency communications. I'm very optimistic about the plans that I have for the center, and I'm just thankful to have this opportunity to meet each of you. I'm familiar with a couple of faces thus far and hope to serve you well. I bring with me 13 and a half years of experience and from a neighboring jurisdiction. That started out much like Orange County when I started my career there. Smaller dispatch center, significant lower call volume, and watched it grow, grew with it, and now bringing that knowledge and experience here to help our communications center and our public safety system prepare for the growth that I know is coming to Orange County.
And just to side note,
Sure.
the hurricane's nothing because on her second day here, she went to the Fire Chiefs Association meeting. So, the hurricane will be a piece of cake for
A
her.
different kind of hurricane.
So,
Well, welcome. We look forward to working with you and get comfortable in that position because
You'll be up there.
you'll be up there a lot. It seems, whether it's budget time or
Okay.
other opportunities, we'll be hearing from you. And we look forward to having you around, learning from you and having new ideas and the perspective that you bring with us. So,
thank you for having me.
great to have you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Dominic.
Next, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'd like to call forward our new Chief of Fire and Emergency Medical Services, who I think can find he's been up here before.
He looks like the last
Doesn't look
guy.
new to me.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know about the new
In
part.
fact, it looks pretty used, to be very honest.
It's on video.
But certainly want to congratulate Chief Nathan Mort for becoming our new fire and emergency medical service. Certainly, I'll just take a point of personal privilege. Nathan stepped in as interim when John Harkins retired and really, I think, rose into the leadership position that he now holds on a permanent basis.
I'd just like to say thank you. I've been with the county since 2007. I've been in fire rescue since 1999. I love Orange County. I love what I do. Orange County taught me to be a better medic than I thought I was before I was in Orange County. The partnership we have with our volunteers is extremely good, and I hope to further what we have going in the future. But right now, my mind's just on storms.
And we're gonna have you back up in a little bit to talk
Yes,
about
sir.
that. So, okay, great. Congratulations.
Welcome, Nathan.
All right, what else did I jump over now that
Nope.
we've changed the order?
Mr. Chairman, I think we can move on.
Okay. No new business, old business, ordinance for short-term rental residential property.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you've had under consideration for the last several meeting cycles a ordinance to create a registry for short-term rentals, and the purpose of this is to provide a notice and a registry for the collection of transient occupancy tax. The Commissioner of the Revenue and I have talked a couple times since we last met, and this will align with her enforcement and administration of other local taxes that are collected, such as the meals tax, for example. This ordinance is ready for advertising and is being brought back to you all tonight to authorize such an advertising for the Tuesday, October 9th, 2018 meeting at 7 p.m.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. David
Or the county attorney.
or the county attorney on the ordinance, proposed ordinance that we have in front of us? Let's see, the date, do we have a date?
Yes.
October 9th, same date. Is there a motion?
So moved. For
Second.
October 9th.
Second? Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. We will announce and schedule a public hearing for October 9th.
Thank you.
Okay. Department Director, Constitutional Officer Report, Berry Hill Station update, Mr. King.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We start right here. So I'm here just to give you a walkthrough of the where we are currently with the Berry Hill Rescue Station project. And I'll just walk through pretty much the scope that I've developed, Chief Morton and I have worked through and developed. So, pretty much we're starting out with the upper crew quarters, and as if you recall, as you walk into the station, to the left there's a stairwell that goes up to the crew station. So pretty much the only thing we're doing here is putting 2 walls up to create a third crew quarters, a bunk room. And also we're punching holes to put some windows into each of the existing bunk rooms and then the new bunk room. And that is to, for code compliance, we need a way for the occupants to get out as a secondary egress in the event of a fire. We're also doing some work to the egress stairs at the back of the building. If you look down that picture, you see that door back there that leads out to an external stairwell. It's kind of in rough shape. There's some code issues there. We're also doing a little bit of HVAC work. We have to add a supply duct, add a return. Electrical, we're doing LED lights throughout the area and moving some switches, adding some outlets. Moving one sprinkler head, adding one sprinkler head, and then we're putting fire detection notification, paint, and carpet in the rooms. Down at the lower level, and again, as you walk in the building, look to the right, you'll see the area that used to be the admin offices. The first office is gonna be turned into the duty officers' quarters. We're gonna demo that closet, add a window and LED lights in there, electrical. There's a electrical panel behind that wall that you can't see that has to be relocated. And we're just changing out some sprinkler heads and moving some of the sprinkler heads. Again, adding fire detection and notification, and then just painting the room. The next room adjacent to that is going to be the crew meeting room or crew work room, also function as the duty officer's office. And all we're doing in there, LED lighting, moving a sprinkler head, fire detection, notification, and paint. And then moving to the meeting room, and the only thing we're doing here is changing out the pretty rough shaped ceiling tiles. There's already LED lighting in there. Changing out the sprinkler heads, adding the fire detection notification, and then paint.
Why are you changing these sprinkler heads?
They're the old style, so we're putting rapid response inside there because it is a multi-use facility. Moving into the lower bay area, what is the large bay, what we refer to as the lower bay. We're going to be adding a washroom and gear locker in the very back corner where you can see that restroom is. There's going to be a decon shower, which is just one of the big pull chain showers in case you come back from a call and you're all covered in debris. Washer and dryer hookups. The gear locker is going to have a ventilation system that's going to be a constant flow to pull all the carcinogens and stuff off the gear out of the building. Ventilation system for the bay, and I will say that is not the fly vent system, fly vent system that we discussed earlier. And Chief Morton and I decided that wasn't a feasible thing to do right now, given the time constraints we're in.
Left-hand side are the existing 2 bunk rooms.
Right.
Yep.
Put a third bunk room, no big deal. You put in some carpet, and it's
Where are the
It's
existing
okay.
showers?
They're
over
down
on the
hall.
right-hand side. They're in what I would consider 2 small bathrooms.
Is that your biggest concern, that those need to be enlarged or expanded or redone or whatever?
Reconfigured to be a shower locker room area. Because, so you don't have people going back and forth trying to shower and get dressed, all of that. And then secondarily, I don't know how much cooking they do, but when we walk through there, that kitchen's in pretty bad shape. I have a concern because of the conditions that the people have to work in. And also, we are doing everything we can to retain people.
So you think some additional emphasis in the crew quarters itself is what you're focused on?
Absolutely, and not that everything else doesn't need to be done, but, and, Chief, if your people are content with that type of living quarters, then that's fine. But I know I spent a lot of time in a firehouse.
No, sir, and this was the primary to get us back in there.
Right.
We were absolutely going to put in CIP projects over the next year or two to upgrade the bathroom facilities, because we do have that one bunk room that was on that wall.
It's not a bunk
That's a
room.
locker room now.
Right.
So there's a lot of things we can do with that wall.
Well, let me ask a question. We get the crews in here under the present plan. What are you gonna do with them during the renovation of the bathrooms?
So there's a second shower facilities in that lower area. It's not
Okay.
great.
Okay.
But it has
I just-
water.
I just absolutely want to be on the record that I feel that we would be much better served to have the crew quarters in better shape first, before we worried about some of the other things.
Well,
Well-
oh, go ahead, Mr. Frank.
We've got a deadline to be in there by the first of the year.
Yes, well, that's when the lease the pods we're in now
And what's the
expires.
problem with extending that lease a month or so?
I don't know if they'll extend it another month.
I can't answer that specifically, but they probably will extend it, but the other problem is that we made a promise to the FAA that we would get these folks
Right.
out here.
Well, and just to be clear, have we gotten farther along with this to begin with? This concern I had from day one, and I voiced this concern, that we needed to move quickly. And I understand that the rest of you, it's not quite as near and dear to your heart as it is to mine, but I've worked in stations of that condition, and I just want to be on the record that I don't think this is the best.
Is it feasible to do a more extensive remodeling
With that,
of the crew quarters by the end of the year or thereabouts? I mean, sounds like there's a good bit of demolition that would have to take place, which shouldn't take a lot of time.
One of the things, Mr. Chairman, if I could, one of the things, and I understand where Mr. Crozier, and I'm certainly not gonna stand in the way of making more improvements for our duty crews beyond what we were doing. I guess we're trying to juggle FAA, leases, certainly working through when we, you know, ours getting to this point wasn't of our own making, this certainly was dealing with, so anyhow, I'm wondering whether we could go forward today, because if we come back with another plan, that's 2 weeks later from now, and things, if we could go forward with this, and then through the CIP process for July 1 of next year, program these remodelings and upgrades to it. And I understand, you know, Chief said that they'll have to kind of work through having folks in there, but one thing I guess I'm focused on is just trying to get out of the airport into town so that they can start responding to calls.
Well, this other facility that you're referring to, that you would be maybe using while the other place was being remodeled, why can't you use that now and go ahead and do the remodeling upstairs?
That area is the unsprinklered part of the area, and it's farthest away from the bay. We'd have to exit out of the building, come back in the building to get in the bay. If you remember, it's where the volunteer rescue squad used to have their admin offices.
You can build a house in 3 months.
Well, do you want us to come back in 2 weeks with a?
Well,
No,
Yeah.
because we need,
no, I don't think we need to wait 2 weeks.
I don't either. What's the first phase funding amount?
90,000.
I would think that if we appropriated the 90,000 and were prudent with our funds, we would be able to do the remodel in there and have funds to move forward with some of the other, area. Maybe I'm living in a dream world, but
a lot of the money on the first half is the sprinkler system and the fire alarm panel.
And we have to do that because. we don't
But by
have-
code, you don't have to do the entire building initially, do you?
There's a fire separation issue between that lower section, and if we go and extend those sprinkler heads down there, my understanding is then we're gonna have to do some other fire petitions and.
Okay, what about from the first bay wall? Up to the far bay, does any of that work need to be done initially?
I could check with the building official and see what he's gonna require. It was, we never really considered.
You have a firewall there, you have a cinder block firewall.
Yeah, because you have to go outside to go back in.
Well, no, yeah, there's a doorway going through there, but you have a complete firewall. I lived in these damn buildings for a long time, and I just don't.
It
I
seems
hate
like-
to see us spend money and then tear stuff apart and re-spend money in the same
It
areas.
doesn't appear he's gonna do that, because he's gonna do the work on the left-hand side there, and then basically make the right-hand side, unusable for some period to renovate that. You still have the left side.
Yeah, I just remodeled my house. We moved there because of pain, trying to move around from the.
Oh, I know.
You know, clearly, there's an advantage in having this made ready before you move anybody in it, if that's doable.
I guess what I'm having a hard time getting straight in my mind is why, just to save something in this budget year, we're gonna try to put something off till next budget year. Because we're all still gonna be here, so it's not, we're not really, and, you know, so it seems like to me we ought to go ahead and fix it
Well-
the way it needs to be fixed.
The phasing was more, to deal with the time constraints
I'm not terribly, you're talking about the time constraints vis-à-vis the FAA, is that right? Okay. Is the sky really gonna fall if we tell the FAA it's gonna be April the 1st?
Not if I write a good enough letter.
Yeah, well, and you're a good letter writer.
What I'd like to see is why it's going to take a contractor past the end of the year to redo that. That just.
If I understand, sir, you wanna get back with the contractor, see how much the remodel to the bathrooms would cost at the same time.
For that, for the picture we're looking at, for that remodel, and,
You wanna upgrade appliances and do,
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, why not just, I guess what I
you're
think
building
I'm
an
hearing is.
apartment.
Yeah, get the, what you're calling the upper crew quarters, make that ready in its final form as phase one.
As
that
part
what
of
you're
phase,
saying?
as part of phase one.
And I.
Because
yeah.
the sprinkler system has to be done as well.
The sprinkler system needs to be done below it, absolutely.
and if we can come back with at least an estimate, it doesn't have to be a final cost, but at least a good estimate at this, in
And a
2
schedule.
weeks, in a
Well,
schedule.
yeah, let's be
I-
moving ahead with scheduling. If you need a separate contract to do the right, you ought to get them started on the left.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly think that if we appropriated the $90,000, that should get us darn close.
Very.
Let-
Well, we can do additional appropriations
Yeah.
at the drop of a hat. I don't see any point in holding this up.
Bathrooms get expensive.
And I'm not gonna try to, I mean, if we've already got a legitimate estimate of 90,000 and trying to add
But-
10,000 or
Right. I mean, we're not deciding whether we're gonna do it, we're deciding at what
Timing.
point we're going to do it. So,
Let's do it now.
let's go ahead and do it, and we have to do additional appropriations, Let
me ask you a question. For the living quarters we have at the airport now, how are they tied into water and sewer and whatnot?
It's tied in, it's,
tied into
it's tied into the public water system that RSA operates, and then the sewer's tied into the drain field that exists there.
Do we have access to that at this site?
This,
Well, this site,
Berry Hillside's tied into both.
water
I
ain't
know,
no.
I mean, if you move those portable buildings
Oh,
up here, then we're out of the way of the FAA,
yeah,
we're back on the site we wanna be on,
yeah,
and we can go ahead and do this right the first time.
if it came to that.
And,
Well, that's-
and rather than moving those buildings, get the
That's,
construction style trailers rather than the pods, because these pods were a royal pain in the neck.
Right, I would suggest if we're gonna, is to go ahead and extend the lease for a bit more. The FAA, write a letter to the FAA, and then we come back with a final.
But
I think I
that's,
would reverse
but
it. Let's
that's
see if we
not,
can do
but that's
this
not
first.
what,
Right.
that's not what
Do
Teal
this
and Jim are
before the end
saying
of the
though,
year.
Jim, I mean, Brian.
But if we start on it now, you could do the left side, we say, all right, more money, do the right side.
Yeah.
And start it now.
Let me ask you, do you guys have a good vision of what the end product should look like here?
Yes, sir.
Then I think what I think I'm hearing this board say is, go make that happen.
Yes.
Hopefully by the end of the year.
Right.
You wizard find money.
Do we need to
Well,
appropriate some money
yeah,
now?
yeah, I would probably appropriate the $90,000 from your contingency. Assistant County Administrator and I will look for sources of fund to reimburse or refund.
Keeps dragging you into it.
To the contingency to allow us to go forward, and then we'll come back with a supplemental appropriation from a source of funds to fund the ultimate balance of the project.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Well, again, it seems to me this is a question of when, not if, so I say, let's go ahead and do it. So, I mean, it's not that we have an endless supply of money, but if we're gonna be spending it the next couple of years anyway, we just will go ahead and get it right now.
And spend it once instead of two
Yeah.
or three times.
So, now, are you ready to let the contracts on phase one now?
We'll go back and.
Oh, they're dragging somebody new in.
Some-
sir, I need to
You've been
What's
sold
that?
into this vortex also?
What's that,
No, sir. We have identified contracts for the fire panels and the alarm system through UVA. But state code does not allow you to share contracts for construction services. So once we have a final scope, if it's under $100,000, we feel I can get 3 quotes. If we think it's over than that, I need to do a formal bid.
We're approving 90,000 for the first phase. So if we have to leave some furniture out or something like that until we move forward,
Well,
I would certainly
Well,
think.
but I think that-
but some of that first phase is not construction work, that's.
Let me make a suggestion. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if you're okay with entrusting me to go ahead and authorize us to proceed to reach this vision, and then those dollars, I would come back to you to ratify my decision.
Go to your budget sheet if you would, Aaron.
I'm just trying to keep the ball going.
Right.
If you set out, if you take the HVAC, the fire alarm and the sprinklers out, for example, you've got 75 there for construction,
Right, that was split up between the 2 phases.
right? And, I mean, it seems to me that you're gonna have to do the fire alarm, and you probably need to do most, if not all, the
Majority of the
sprinklers.
sprinkler work is on that side.
And so we probably are faced with procure construction up to 90, and then we will separately fund the fire alarm and the sprinklers on top of that.
Yes, sir. We
That-
envision the construction being a separate contract. And if
Okay.
it's under 100,000, we would just need 3 quotes and to make sure we had clear scopes to give contractors.
Okay.
I've got a suggestion. Why don't we appropriate the 75, the 23, and the 20? And that the construction was for everything, but we'll use that as the base amount and credit and charge against that this crew quarters, and then whatever's left over is available to go into the further, and then we can supplement that.
Sir, we'll see what quotes come in.
So, you're giving a pool of dollars that are going for sprinkler, fire alarm and the construction, understanding that the 75,000 is not for just the crew quarters, but we will do the bathrooms and everything against that, and then come back and reconcile the budget when we move into the other phase.
So you need an appropriation of,
75,
198.
118.
118.
Okay, I would modify my motion from 90,000 to 118,000.
Okay. Second is modified, okay, any discussion remaining? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. Go forth.
I'm glad I didn't have that authority, so. All right, thank you, gentlemen.
All right.
Thank you, Aaron.
Chief, we need you to return to the podium. You have two items in a row here that, the FEMA grant and also the declaration of the local state of emergency.
Yes, sir. So I'm happy to announce that the county received a regional grant from the Assistance Firefighter grants for new air packs to replace the air packs that we bought back in 2006 off of the AFG grant. Obviously, the air pack's one of the most important things that all firefighters out here need to wear so that they can go in fires. The regional request was for $930,600. The federal commitment is $84,600, with a 10% local match, which we had in the CIP funding that was already approved. That is gonna go towards 132 SCBA's, 264 SCBA cylinders, and 198 mass. The nice thing about this is this is bringing us up 3 standards. So the NFPA puts out the standards for the safety on the air packs. Right now, we're 3 standards. Some of our packs are 4 standards behind. So getting this grant has been a godsend so that we can get new packs for, and this is for the whole county, for all the volunteer departments and COFIMs. The other great thing is, if we didn't get this grant, we would have had to replace all our bottles next year, which would have been a cost of $300,000 to the county. Because you can only hydro test the bottles 3 times before you have to get rid of the bottles. Any questions on the AFG?
Fantastic.
This was what, the third time around?
Yes, sir. It was the 3rd time around. We used a local grant writer, or a grant writer, and the only thing that they did not cover through this grant was we asked for RIT packs. RIT packs, Rapid Intervention Team packs. They did not fund that, but we'll find another source for those RIT packs. The second item.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as you know, with Hurricane Florence due to landfall, Chief and his staff have been coordinating with the Virginia Department of Emergency Management preparations. I think he's here tonight. I passed out to you the latest email that he's provided, giving the event is going to be from roughly
Thursday night, Friday through Monday at least of next week.
We had a team meeting this afternoon. Mr. White is considered is the emergency manager.
Blame Florence on me.
Emergency manager, services manager under our county code. And so right now, the state has issued a declaration of emergency. The federal government, President Trump has as well. It would be appropriate for this board to declare a state of local emergency effective immediately and continue until such effect as we come back to you all to rescind that. What that does is we'll have a resolution with a standard resolution drawn up for Mr. White's signature. Number of things that allow us to happen. Chief will stand up the EOC. We'll start in the mode if there are federal or state funds available for reimbursements of expenses incurred as a result of this this emergency, we can apply for reimbursement. But for right now, we're going to start moving forward with our preparations. You may want to share a little bit about your preparation.
Yes, sir. So actually, we've got a new forecast model as of 5 o'clock. I haven't been able to send that one out yet. Currently, it's still taking that a little southerly path. It's going to stall out on Friday, lower in North Carolina. threat to us is gonna be high winds. Our soil is extremely wet right now, so any extra rain that we get, and we will get extra rain, is gonna cause flooding, trees down, power outages. We've been working all day with Virginia Department of Emergency Management, coordinating calls to Region 2, coordinating weather updates. Some of what you see there is the weather updates. We've been working with DSS and the American Red Cross, if and when we need to stand up a shelter. We are prepared to do that. Location at this time is not finalized.
Any sense of where the flooding might result in shelter needs?
So the flooding will obviously have Raccoon Ford Road area will be flooded. A lot of the flooding that we had from the last go around of storms. Our issue with sheltering needs right now is the schools don't have backup generators. The biggest place that we have to shelter a large mass of people right now is Barbersville Fire Department. They have the bingo hall with a generator. I've already talked to the volunteer chief up there. They've canceled bingo up through next week, so that if we need to move people to a shelter, that we can use Barbersville. That's our biggest problem, is if we lose power and we put them at the Hornet's Nest, and we lose power at the Hornet's Nest, now I have to bus everybody that's in that shelter to a different off-site shelter. So we've been working on options. If we don't lose power in town, I've talked to Mr. Berry. The Hornet Center is absolutely doable. But again, if it does lose power, once they come into the shelter, we're responsible for them. So we have to move everybody to a different area. Like Mr. David said, we'll be upstaffing our staff to have an additional ambulance on the road Friday, Saturday, and an additional individual in a four-wheel drive vehicle. We have a conference call tomorrow night with the Chiefs Association members to go over their staffing, their needs.
Part of the discussion comes to when sustained winds are 35, 40, 45, or 50, when it's not safe to send first responders out on the road, which then puts the ECC, Ms. Curry, and her folks in a difficult position of saying the winds are high enough that it puts the first responders in jeopardy of injury or things trying to respond, and so we're going to be working through some of that difficult decisions depending on more information that comes in from the state. But right now, if you all would have a motion to declare a state of a local emergency for the emergency manager to sign, then that gets us going. We will periodically be giving you all, board members, updates on this. And then also, if anybody gives you a call, certainly, I guess, point them to the general number at the Emergency Communications Center. We'll be pushing out notices and information here going forward periodically of what the county is going to do. The last thing I'll say is we did have a conversation about the county's general government services, whether we stay open, close, or things like that. Those calls will certainly not be made today or tomorrow, but closer to when the event starts. We have practiced, we have a continuity of operations plan for our general government. This building is available by generator, so we can make payroll, we can do some of those things should this event continue for quite some time after the weekend. So I feel pretty good on our preparations at this point, but really, we don't know what the extent of this event is, and unfortunately, we may have to get on the other side of it to be able to determine.
Just to emphasize a point that we discussed earlier today, if we get calls from individual constituents either looking for help or having questions, the best response is to send them to the general number at the 911 center. I understand Chief Moore is going to have staff there in addition to the normal operators that can help give consistent responses to the various situations, and so it's probably better that we not try to provide answers other than how to get to the right person, and it's for consistency. I think that's
And Allison and I will be pushing information out to you gentlemen through us, rather than having the chief to think about having to get things to us. Allison and I will be the conduit for all the information that we can get to you. by email or phone call if I have to.
And we have VDEM regional meetings, conference calls at 2 o'clock, and then we have a regional call at 4 o'clock. So you'll usually see the updates after those two conference calls.
And the sheriff's office has been part of.
When will we have, when are the experts, saying that we'll have sort of a good idea whether this turns out to be a major emergency or a complete bust? I mean, when is the?
Complete honesty is probably Friday morning.
We won't know until Friday morning whether we're gonna get socked or not, okay.
I will say that the VDEM is taking this one extremely seriously and comparing it to Isabel.
Dogwood picnic is probably off.
I'd say the Liberty Ride might be off too.
Yep.
Oh, it is canceled, okay.
Anything scheduled for this weekend is, hopefully they had a rain date.
Right. Anything else, Chief, you wanna make us aware of, or? I understand with the declaration of emergency, you have the authorities you need to requisition people and products and spend money and.
You do.
Yes.
He
Well-
in your stead.
Right,
Been there, done that.
yeah,
Mr. Chairman, I would so move.
okay.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
This local state of emergency will remain into effect until we bring this matter back to the board to have it rescinded.
All right, thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, let's see. We have a double agenda tonight because of canceling the last meeting. I guess what do we have in the way of closed meeting items?
We've got a few, but Mr. Chairman, if I could make a suggestion, there are two items under my report that Economic Development Tourism folks are here for. If we might be able to take that up, I know Glenda's got a couple more items, but if we could take up my E and F, that would be, I think, helpful for them to, while they're here.
Okay,
If you think, we've got some time to do that.
well, we have public comment at 7 and a public hearing, so,
If it's all right, Mr. Chairman, I'll move to item E under my report, and then we'll go back, catch things up. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as you all know from your adopted CIP, we've identified a project involving renovation reuse of the historic clerk's office. This project would convert this space into office space for the Department of Economic Development and Tourism staff. I think in our prior discussions, this building would be put back to a use. Right now, it's being heated and cooled and it's doing everything but occupied. It's a storage space for the treasurer, the commissioner of the revenue. I think IT has some things in there, and admin, we have some things in. We find other places for storage. What I'm proposing we do is pursue a loan and a grant from the Rural Development Office based in Harrisburg as part of the USDA. What they do is they fund any number of projects, but they fund what are called public facility projects. These are low-interest loans that are amortized over 40 years. And so right now, this is about 3.7%, I think is what, or 3.8 rows around that. We are eligible for the loan and grant because of the census tract where the building is located is under 20,000, meaning it's the orange. It's not the entire county, it's here in the town of Orange and the census tract that encompasses it. What we would do is engage Wiley Wilson to do a preliminary architectural report. That report would meet the criteria of what would go into the building and a cost estimate. We would bring that cost estimate back to you all, but then that would become the basis that rural development will work with us on a loan package. This would be a lease revenue debt issued by the Orange Economic Development Authority. This is the most efficient way of doing this. Is typical type of debt issue that the Orange EDA has done for other public buildings, public safety, and the courthouse. We are going to brief the EDA on this matter on September 20th. One of the things that we are also going to do is that, I've talked to Mr. Hildebrand and Mr. Kane, but we're in probably the $500,000 there's money already available for the new roof improvements that we would also add to it. But we would get into this with really a nominal outlay of money. We would also get a grant potentially for the furniture, fixtures, equipment. There may be some issues whether our household income qualifies, but we'll work hard on the grant piece. But what then I would propose is, once we get the project in, we're gonna program that debt as part of our CIP. There is no prepayment penalties, fees, or anything associated with paying this thing off early. Certainly running a project of this scale out 40 years is not a real good use of taxpayers' money, but programming retirement of this debt in a 3 to 5, 6, 10-year period as part of our CIP is certainly doable. At the end of the day, what this does is get an adaptive reuse of I guess, a very important to the county, building to the county's history. It brings back to life Courthouse Square as a first step, and it also helps with some space needs that we have upstairs on the second floor. Rose Deal, I guess I volunteered Rose, but to be kind of the point person on this. One of the other intents of this, going about it this way, which I would admit is a little counter to the normal way of doing capital facilities budgeting and programming, is that rural development also funds infrastructure projects, large infrastructure projects, water, sewer plants, under the same terms, low interest, 40 years. And so if we're able to create some staffing experience doing this type of work, because this is some paperwork involved with it, then that may poise us to be able to undertake some of these larger projects using rural development as a potential funding source. They also do commercial parks for economic development and things. And so it becomes a real good staffing capacity here. So my goal is to start slow and small, and then certainly have the ability to move to larger projects if the board thinks that way. I'll stop. I know there's other, maybe some questions, or from Rose or Phil or
Your memo in our package isn't asking for any action tonight, but I guess my question is, are you in fact asking for some action with respect to
Giving an estimate?
well, the architectural report?
No, sir, I'm going to go ahead and pursue that under our project development fund. What I did is that I want to get the preliminary architecture report, so we know how much this is, and then I'm going to bring that back to you. If this doesn't seem like something you want to pursue, we're not moving any farther forward than that preliminary architectural report. We've had this in the CIP, it just, the funding source was not being determined.
Just one comment, unless something's happened with that HVAC system, there is no heating and air conditioning in that building. Hasn't been for 10 years, at least. Yeah.
But, Mr. White, I'm comfortable with moving forward. I think our estimate for this report's about $20,000. We're going to have the EDA adopt a reimbursement resolution so they could reimburse themselves if they reimburse the board to the cost of this if it's advised. This was kind of FYI. I think the charge was work out a way of financing this, and that's what I come back just to make you aware of where I'm going.
I would just, we should look at some other options for financing it. I can tell you, having a little bit of experience dealing with RDA, attempting to deal with RDA in the not too distant past, was the conclusion that was reached was that it wasn't worth the hassle. And as a matter of fact, the interest rate wasn't even as attractive as we were able to get from other sources. So I just put out a warning, unless things have changed, this is not a panacea.
I'll submit that the bureaucracy associated with this type of loan program is significant, but it is doable.
But the rates at the end, by the time you added all the fees and the other stuff that went with it, they actually were not competitive.
So let us get the preliminary architecture report, and then we at least have a number we can start working on.
Okay,
Thank you, gentlemen. The next item I have that involves the Department of Tourism and Economic Development. Members of the Germanna Wilderness Area Plan steering our committee, Mr. White, our Chairman White, Vice Chairman Crozier, and Supervisor Frame, met with a firm that I've had experience working with, not here in Orange. And what we're proposing to do is to start a process of doing a trade analysis, a market analysis, analytics with this company to really understand our retail market here. And this is really looking at trying to set up a retail recruitment strategy for the Germanna Wilderness Area Plan, but also extends to a lot of our small businesses here in the town of Orange and the town of Gordonsville and elsewhere. This firm and their proposal in there, I'm not going to go through the details, but they take consumer analytics and really help us inform ourselves of who our market is, comprises our retail market, but then there's also a tourism piece to this. This study, I'll let the three supervisors speak to what their impressions were, but I think this is going to open up some opportunities for us to recruit some retail out to the Germanna Wilderness area, and then by extension help small businesses here in Gordonsville and Orange understand how to better position their businesses and to attract additional customers, and then also from the tourism standpoint help us with identifying some target markets for us to advertise or recruit promote Orange County for visitors. And the funding from this comes from one-time funds that are available in the Economic Development and Tourism budget. And there's no commitment to go beyond year one.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. David?
It looks awfully interesting in terms of kind of information you can pull out of this.
Yeah, I guess my understanding of what they're doing, there's, as we've all heard from lots of different sources, there's this incredible set of data out there in the, ionosphere or some sphere that people have learned how to do analytics using that data and can draw some, fairly accurate and detailed conclusions about people's habits and desires and these kind of things. And that's essentially what this is. It's reaching into that database on a selective basis. This is not disclosing personal information or any of that kind of stuff. And really seeing what would work here and not. It could produce some interesting results.
I think it would be best for, I'm not sure how much it'll help existing small businesses in the county, but I'm sure that it'll, in terms of recruitment of businesses for the GWAP area.
Well, long-term, it may also give the residents a better understanding of why particular businesses locate in the county or don't locate in the county. I know the review, I believe it was last week, there was a article by Jeff Poole trying to explain why a Taco Bell, and that we as consumers choose based on our pocketbook, not on our verbal preferences, what businesses we get. So it may assist with that some, get people to better understand as well.
But my usual comment is there's not enough rooftops.
Well, and it's, a lot of times, it's not necessarily the rooftops, it's the, the income level within those rooftops.
But that usually handles most of the responses.
Okay. Let's see, did you have this as an action, or?
Yes, sir.
Gotta go back to
Would I appreciate you all approving the proposal submitted by Buxton and authorize me to proceed.
Okay, is there a motion?
to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you,
Unanimous.
gentlemen. That's at our hall. I think we can go to close and then
Okay,
come back.
all right.
All right, ready? Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Orange County desires to discuss in closed meeting the following: discussion of the performance of the county administrator, and discussion concerning the demotion, disciplining, or resignation of specific employee of the public body, discussion of consideration of acquisition of real property for public purpose, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, and consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by the public body regarding the provision of specific legal advice on specific legal matters with respect to FOIA, service districts, and derelict buildings in the county, and whereas pursuant to section 2.23711A1, A3, and A8 of the Code of Virginia, such discussions may occur in closed meeting. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Orange County does hereby authorize discussion of aforestated matters in closed meeting. Need that as a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Closed.
If and when
You ready there, Miss Allison?
On par with.
We are going to continue the closed session after the regular agenda. Let's see. I think it is the 7 o'clock hour, so we should open the public comment period. Do we have anyone signed up for public comments at this point? Okay, close the public comment and move to the scheduled public hearing, SUP 1708. And Mr. Weissong, are you going to lead us through this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, good evening to the board. Tonight I'm going to provide a brief overview of SUP 17-08. This is an application to the county from Albemarle County for the operation and opening of Phase 2 of Pretty Creek Park. The use here is a multi-use trail park to include hiking, biking, equestrian, and like any special use permit application, this went through the typical SUP process. Planning staff worked with Albemarle County to make sure that the application was clear before forwarding it to the application review committee. And we got some great comments from some of our department heads, which have influenced our conditions. And this came before the Orange County Planning Commission on July 19th. We had, I believe, 2 members from the public come and speak, and they were generally supportive of the application. Planning Commission did recommend conditional approval of this application. There were 2 minor changes. One was the adding of a condition that essentially stipulates that Orange County citizens are not to be charged a access fee that is higher than what would be charged for Albemarle County citizens. And then the second change was that one of the conditions of approval was amended. Planning staff had said that within 6 months of approval of this SUP by the Board of Supervisors, the Albemarle County Police Department shall execute a memorandum of understanding with the Orange County Sheriff, et cetera. And the Planning Commission thought it would be sensible to amend that to say that prior to the approval of this SUP, that memorandum of understanding ought to be executed. It's my understanding that Albemarle has signed off on their end of it. But it's
I have it right here.
You do?
Yes, I have the signed copy from Albemarle.
Oh, excellent. So Tom, I think, is more in the know on that. I don't know if we need to amend it then, if that's the case.
No, I don't, I think the condition is, at this point, of no significance.
Great, okay. Well, with that being said, planning staff does recommend approval as presented, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Any questions, Thomas, at this point?
Just one question. I did receive the email, but I still haven't figured out an answer. Does Mrs. Pettifee have rights to go across that easement or not?
It is Tom, it's my understanding that, that is not the case, but Tom, you may be more versed than that.
I don't know.
So in other words, it's clear as mud.
Yes.
Okay, but there was an attempt to clarify whether there was or was not.
Correct.
She called me, Ms. Pettifee called me last week, and she was on the phone with me for over an hour explaining her position. And
Okay. My concern has been addressed, and I would just encourage that if they have any other dealings, to make sure that everything's very clear prior to moving forward.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, Thomas?
fully justified in my earlier response. Sidebar here.
Yeah. Okay, let's, open the public hearing. We have anyone signed up to speak?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Close the public hearing? Okay.
Motion to approve.
Okay, motion, have a second. Any discussion, any items at this point?
Call the question.
All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Frame,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Crozier,
Aye.
Mr. Goodwin,
Aye.
and Mr. White.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Okay. Thank you. We'll move back to our regular agenda. I believe we were on item 7, new number D, carry forward request.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, in your agenda packet are the carry forward requests, carrying forward unused budgetary appropriations
Hope they left the
from
car running.
FY 18 to FY 19. And in total, there is $614,717. 482 of that is in the general fund, and of that amount, 262 represents the money that we've been setting aside for the reassessment project each year. So that leaves about 213 in true ongoing grant-funded or donations and projects that are underway at June 30th but need to be completed in FY 19. We're also carrying forward the balances of forfeited assets for both the sheriff and the Commonwealth Attorney. And there were $102,000 worth of landfill projects that were in progress at June 30th. The only other thing that I particularly wanted to mention was we did have a request for another $41,000, which was left in the tourism budget. Most of that was due to a vacancy in that department. And since the new tourism manager is trying to catch up and really do some aggressive marketing campaigns, there may be additional requests that come forward later in the fiscal year, but they are not included in this request.
Right, it was, Glenn and I agree with Lori that once she's identified an initiative, specific initiative, this fixed dollar amount, we would bring that back to you on a case-by-case basis.
That money just flows into the fund balance and sits there
Right.
until, okay. The only question I had after we met the other day and talked about this, since Kurt's here, I'll ask it, direct it to him maybe. These ongoing landfill projects, were any of those CIP related, or was that all operating money that's being carried forward here? Do you know the specifics of that? Or maybe you do, Glenda. I mean, it all adds up to a significant amount of money, and I was just.
Right, I have the folder, and it is,
So what is that, post-closure care, right?
Well, you got leachate stuff and corrective actions and gas mediation and, I mean, it's,
So I will say this about leachate. We're gonna have good years and bad years, and we're getting ready to have a bad one. So it's very difficult to budget that from year to year on the operational side of things. So anytime that we have available funds at the end of the year, I suggest we carry them forward to cover, because theoretically, I've been trying to reduce the budget every year on leachate. Because in theory, as a landfill cell matures, you get less leachate. But the fact of the matter is, our leachate pond is exposed to Mother Nature, and when it gets water in it, we have to deal with it as
Sure,
leachate.
sure.
So,
okay.
that part of it. And then there's mostly any other funding that's available at the end of the operational year, I carry forward for things unknown and things that pop up. For instance, in the solid waste committee is aware of this. We had an issue with gas exceedance on the old landfill. It was based mostly on the fact that the water, the ground saturated. Anyway, we had to put in some additional, vents. It was about $17,000 that I didn't specifically have a budget for. So I carry any funds available in the year to cover things such as that,
Okay. All right. Well,
if that helps.
And we do have the contract for leachate with the town comes up again soon. I was at the town meeting when he was prepping
Okay.
all the new board members there that,
Yeah, I
the
suppose it
contracts
is
that were
that
coming up
month.
and leachate was one of them.
Can I expect them to increase their fees? Did they say that?
No, it was just giving them information for the new board members and the others that all the long-term contracts they have, and leachate was the first one that came up, and there are others, but, so, but yeah, it's,
Thanks for reminding me of that.
Yeah.
sorry.
okay.
That is a substantial dollar amount.
All right. Any other questions of Linda or Kurt? So I need a motion.
So move. Second.
Okay. Any more discussion? We'll have all the, you ready to vote, Mr. Johnson?
Absolutely.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I think it was unanimous. All right. Next item is the budget calendar.
Already.
Yeah, was exactly my reaction. Lord, how in the world do we focus on that?
If you can believe it, this is a budget calendar for fiscal, 20. And, this is similar to the budget calendars that we've done in the past with the same type of work, session schedule and budget meetings, worked around our regular meeting schedule. And it would put us adopting a budget on April 9th of 2019. This is not the year of the reassessment, where the reassessment change in real estate values has to be figured in. That would be for the next year. So, there aren't a lot of changes to
There
the
was-
budget calendar.
There's one item on there on the 12th of February that we have, as part of the group working with the school board, is that this past year, we did not have them come and present a budget in the same way that they had done in other years, and that seemed to work well. They're gonna be included in the county budget as with all the other departments and entities, so we shouldn't need to reserve that particular time slot.
Okay, we can make that adjustment.
That was the only thing I saw that,
What were you were talking about the February 12 meeting?
yeah, there's an item there for the school board to present a budget, and we have,
Oh,
we've
we've
moved
changed.
away from that.
Yes, okay, yeah.
And I suggest we make that adjustment, make that change.
So there's no need for that, I mean, we have a regular meeting that day, but there's no need for
Right.
it to be on the budget calendar.
Right.
I'll
That was
make
only-
sure that gets changed.
Any other? Guess we need a motion on this as well, okay?
Second.
And motion and a second with that modification, I assume.
Yeah, my only comment would be that I know the last several years, we've scheduled a bunch of extra budget work sessions that we then don't use. And I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense to have a bunch of extra things that we're just gonna cancel, but I'm not smart enough to know whether that's happened here or not, but in the past, we've not used these.
There are a number on there, and I think it just depends on the particular factors that come into play each year, that may be different with the state budget and whether or not they would be needed. So since we'll be in the middle of the state's biennium, we may not need this many work sessions. So I could certainly take some off.
Well, I don't know, we would know which ones at this point.
You've only got 3 work sessions
Yeah.
there, do you?
I know that, I just know in past years, we really, I don't think, it's been several years since we actually had a budget work session. We've done it in the board meeting. I mean, but it's a minor point.
Well, as we refine our processes, there's not the need, and as the economy's improved from what it was when I first got on and everything went to hell in a handbasket.
It did happen all at the same time.
You didn't know with me. But, yeah, so hopefully we'll need none of them.
Yeah.
Right.
It's easier to get
Easier to
schedule
pull
than
them
to
out.
schedule.
Okay, any other discussion? I have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Just one other item, if I could just update the board. You might have noticed that we had not passed out the budget document for FY19, and we've been working on it, Connie and I, all summer. But with the vacancy in our payroll accountant position, we were struggling to get it done. We did get that done last week, and we got it submitted to GFOA for the award program again. But it's also been posted online. And for board members, if you would like to have a hard copy, we are happy to make them. But I wasn't sure, some people don't want all the paper. So if you could just let me know via email or phone call, if you would like a hard copy, we'll be happy to get one to you. But just know that it's on the website. You would like one?
Yes.
Okay,
I would as well.
okay.
I'll look at it online, and if I have a lot of trouble, I might come back and ask for one as well. That's a beastly document to try to do on
It
this.
is.
Yeah.
And there are links in the table of contents. If you click on an item, it'll take you to that place within the document. The listing of departments also works that way, so if there's a particular department you wanna look at, once you get to that list, you can kind of pick and choose. So we've tried to do some things to make navigating that big PDF a little easier, but it is a beast.
All right, thank you. Okay, county attorney's report.
I have a report.
Okay.
No, Dr. Sotaro?
Oh, sorry, yeah,
Yes.
that's right. I marked it out, and then I put it back in, so,
See if the switch here.
yeah.
Stephanie was going to take this, but she went, Mr. Hildebrand is stepping in for Stephanie, so I'm sorry.
The extra man's gonna take it.
Yeah, so, there's a board report out in front of your places concerning this matter.
Excuse me?
There's a board, do you have a copy of the board report?
I did, I grabbed it from Stephanie on the way out.
Okay.
This is what he's talking about.
Yep.
Everybody has one of those?
Yep.
That Stephanie prepared. You see the map, you see the 2 sites. And talking to Mr. Johnson, he would prefer that we use site B. I would tend to agree, it gets the tower back, away from the road, away from the collection site. It just adds a little more road construction and a culvert. But in the scheme of things, I don't find that to be too burdensome. The last page shows you the cost differential. So to go with site D, looking at an increase of about $22,000. Stephanie's memo, what does it say?
We're going to monitor the budget
Okay,
to see if there's other credits that can be applied. We'll try to work this into the overall budget without The only other thing that I'll add that Stephanie and I talked about, and Kurt knows this as well, this concludes all of the tower sightings. Every tower has been located to a latitude, longitude on these new builds, and so Harris will proceed with getting the necessary permits, FCC permits for permitting these towers, which is a real critical component for us to stay on the timeline of getting site plans.
It also, even though it is the pricier of the two, it's still less than what was originally put aside for that. Also, an additional reason I mentioned it to Brian is that this kind of preserves the front of the county property there for possible future other uses, whether it's reconfiguration of the collection center or possibly even some other county use. If we had put the tower right there, it would really have kind of chopped up the front of it there, so.
I think the other important thing is they were able to reduce the height of that tower to the
Right.
point where it doesn't have to have lights and all those kind of things.
And it will be pretty well, natural screening is pretty good back in that Site B, so.
The tower reduction because of the fiber lateral, which you all approved to be extended. Good, this is for your information, we just want to, now we've concluded the site selection for all the towers.
Thank you, Kurt.
All of the towers by fiber optic.
Yeah, except for Clark, of course. Yeah. Turned out to be
Much better.
much better, yeah. Okay, now, will you let me move to item 9?
Yes.
Finally?
Yes, sir.
Have I left anything else?
No, I don't think we've left anything.
My own note-taking has gotten me in trouble. Okay. Mr. Davis.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'll run through several matters. Remember, this is consolidation from your first meeting in September, our last meeting in August that we had canceled. We're starting that time of year again, budget, but also legislative priorities for the upcoming 2019 General Assembly. I'm only doing this tonight. If you all have any input tonight, great. If not, take this under advisement. I will probably bring this up it's probably the first meeting in October with a draft of the legislative program. I won't reprint all of this. I'll leave this. You can get this through the Agenda Center online. But if there are any issues tonight that you'd like to bring up, I think Mr. Frame has some information he'd like to talk to the board about.
Yeah, the school has made this pitch a few times. This is a cost of competing for the Orange teachers. The other jurisdictions around us get an extra allowance for high-cost areas, and we're having to compete with those areas for teachers, and we'd like to get the same consideration. I'd just like to include that as one of our priorities.
Make that one of our local priorities.
Yeah, one of our local ones.
Under education, so the cost of feeding funds.
Do we have anything, I need to look, I mean, this has come up, over the years.
I don't think we had it.
We never added anything?
I don't
Okay, that's
recall
what.
us
We
having-
had the issue on the property that's in land use.
Right.
We raised that,
Yeah, the composite index impact.
the composite index calculation.
Allison just said it is in there.
I know we've discussed it, I just.
Yeah.
Up on the big screen.
Oh, okay.
We did have it. Was it last year's?
I believe we added it last year.
Okay. Well, let's just keep it there then.
Goodness. Yeah, we don't need all these reports from VACO again.
No, I'm not, I'm just going to have a draft of
Yeah.
ours.
I had 3 copies of that legislative, no, I had 4.
That last one.
I like paper, but not that much.
Last one was a book.
You know, in years past, this was the only time I did all of this. So we'll keep the cost of competition funds. I'll have this back at your first meeting in October with a draft legislative program.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Next item. Next item, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm pleased to bring to you tonight an item that I've been working on, with certainly helping my colleagues here, but also with you all's support and guidance. And one of the things that I'm coming to is when we were meeting and you all were developing your two-year strategic priorities, the two headings of vibrant economic development and effective reflective government were very important. And one of the things that fed into that was how, as we as the staff, can successfully implement and manage these priorities for the long term, for their long-term success. And there was quite a bit of discussion and thought about how we might be able to I guess, reorient our way of our executive leadership, but also the way our county is organized as far as the services that we provide. And the board settled on, certainly very much in agreement with this, where we're really going to have two focus. The organization that's been developed with the county here is not unlike any other rural locality that has experienced some growth, but these models of organization really are a little dated, in that by reorienting ourselves to looking at citizen service as the primary function of our government, and providing high-quality, cost-efficient services is very, very important. But then we also have management services, basically the services that are provided to the internal county functions. And so with that, I'm proposing that we do a restructuring that creates an executive level position for the Assistant County Administrator for Citizen Services. I've handed out another handout that gives organizationally a chart that you all were certainly having input and giving me guidance. But essentially, this Assistant County Administrator for Citizen Service would provide a day-to-day as well as strategic management and leadership in support of the Departments of Planning and Building Services. And gentlemen, I use that as a working title, just to oversee that. Fire and EMS, Parks and Recreation, the Emergency Communications Center, and the Orange County Public Library. Those are really direct frontline services that we provide to the citizens. And having somebody that can oversee and provide leadership to those functions, as well as be their advocate and certainly help out through the responsiveness to citizens, the responsiveness to this board, particularly through the budget process, we think will serve us well going into the future. One of the things I'll add with this, with Ms. Bradley as the Assistant County Administrator for Management Services, we would have two executive level positions, one for the internal services and one for the external services. Mr. Hildebrand, as you all know, is capably served and continues to capably serve as our Assistant County Administrator for Operations. But we've had, a number of conversations where his time with the county is probably counted in the number of decades more, but no, sorry. But it's several years. Certainly he's got the Public Safety Facility Project, our utility planning out in the east end of the county. But what we want to do is to provide for some succession planning, because I think you all agree that one of the primary responsibilities you all have, and I certainly have to the organization, is the continuity of leadership here. And so with his upcoming retirement in several years, this would create two very fundamental Assistant County Administrator positions that would help me in my capacity as providing service to you all, but also to the organization. And it would allow me to move into more of a strategic role that I'm already playing, but I certainly would be more formalized than what I'm doing today. The only other thing I'll add with this, this will be a slow-moving process. It'll be deliberate. But my next step would be to retain a qualified firm to come up with a profile this profile would involve you all's input, certainly these department heads that are involved, as well as Kurt and Glenda having input. And then once everybody agreed that the profile of this individual from experience, education, credentials, and certainly fit for the organization, then you all would need to authorize me to move ahead, and I wouldn't move ahead with recruiting this position until that time. I've kind of gone over a lot, but really at the end of the day, I think what we're doing is really reorienting our county organization to better serve, to advance the service to our citizens, and continue the good work that you all have given us the responsibility and ability to do.
It's interesting, as I was reviewing this the other night, happened to have the television on, and I saw a commercial for, of all things, a trucking company, Old Dominion Freight Line, which happens to be based in not too far from where I grew up as a kid. And I wasn't really focused on it, but what caught my attention was their tagline was "Promises Kept." And I just happened to have this in front of me as I was looking at it, and I think, by golly, that's sort of what we're talking about. We have, explicitly or otherwise, made commitments to serve the citizens of this county in a lot of different ways. Whether, as you see the list here, whether it's dealing with fire and rescue, or planning and zoning, and parks and rec, and libraries, and all of those kind of things, that there's an expectation there. And I think a line, not necessarily promises kept, but a sort of cultural definition that goes something like that is what we're after here. It really is someone that can have that focus as their primary responsibility, because our citizens, as we all know, are quite demanding, and their expectations are really high, and I think our challenge is to meet them. And this seems to be taking us more directly in that direction. So, anyway, promises kept. It was.
Here's the rest of the tagline. Promises delivered.
Oh, was it? Oh, well, you're right. I didn't get past the promises kept, but yeah, it was interesting just to reflect on that a bit, because I think one of the challenges that we're going to have going forward is to characterize this position in a way that we can describe it through position descriptions or otherwise, or that will guide not only the recruiting process, but then also the guidance to this new person to create the kind of organization that delivers.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right.
You need a motion?
No action, I don't think.
Well, I would like a motion just to
I
authorize
would
me.
move that we would authorize the county administrator to
Solicit the service.
engage her qualified executive search time to develop a position profile for the assistant county administrator for citizen services.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
My only comment on the graphic is that the public library is governed by a governing board, but it doesn't fall under this position in the way that these other
Yes, sir.
departments do. So I'm assuming it'd be more of a liaison function there.
Exactly the same relationship I now have with Katie, and the director, and she reports to that board. But thank you, Mr. Johnson. That's actually, I'll update that.
Yeah, that probably should be
I
the
can
board.
update. Right.
Okay. Anything else? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And it's unanimous.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the confidence.
All right, Moody's.
Yes, sir. Promises kept or delivered. Mr. Chairman, as you know, we are rated by both Moody's and Standard & Poor's. We I would argue, very enviable and extremely good credit positions and profiles. Moody's has done our overview, and I'll just quote, Orange County has a very good credit position, and our AA2 rating is level with U.S. counties median AA2. The notable credit factors include healthy financial position, a strong wealth and income profile, a solid tax base, and moderate debt and pension liabilities. What this really, I take it, and I know the board does as well, this is a report card on the county's financial management and really the way we go about doing our business. And I was real pleased when I read of this review. There's nothing, that's for your information.
Okay.
Next item, gentlemen, we had a town hall meeting at Locust Grove Middle School last Wednesday.
Yep.
Allison, want to recognize her, was real instrumental. I don't think was feeling entirely great that time, but was able to pull it off. The power stayed on. I think this time the lights didn't go off. But Zach Harris came and presented his final recommendations, or Michael Baker's recommendations for the Route 3 corridor access management plan. I'll certainly let board members that were familiar with this on the front end of it, but I really think this is something that VDOT will be getting behind. Alan Saunders certainly is very, very supportive of some of the things that are coming out of it, but this is a long-range vision that now allows us to start a process of getting VDOT to look at some improvements to manage the volumes, the congestion, and certainly safety issues along that corridor. Oh, and one other housekeeping thing, we're going to, the planning commission talked about this, Mr. Yancey and Mr. Hutchinson reported back to the planning commission. Their recommendation and the direction is to actually take this, once it's been finalized, and then bring it through a process of amending it into the comprehensive plan.
Well, VDOT actually made that request.
Thank you.
They would like, they expect that this would become part of the comprehensive plan. Yeah, I mean, VDOT's primary motivation here is to keep as much traffic flowing through Route 3 as possible. They recognize that we aren't gonna build very many new roads anytime in the near future. Jim and Lee and I happened to go to a Region 7-8 meeting a week or so ago, and one of the topics was funding for transportation, of which there is, a shrinking amount, certainly relative to the need, and so.
Well, at least by having it a VDOT-approved plan, more likelihood to get some VDOT money as well as anything else we come up with.
So we'll keep it going, and I will actually have once they finalize the copy of the plan, I'll bring it back to this board at a board meeting, just so you all.
In talking to the people who attended, I think I didn't get any negative reaction. But nobody was out there cheering for it either. It was sort of like, okay, well, this is something we gotta do. Yeah, it didn't,
Well, it had that four-letter word at the beginning of it, VDOT.
Yeah.
So,
I did hear some comments that were, I guess I would call them, people felt somewhat reassured that at least these things are being talked about and thought about and planned and the like.
yeah, I think that's probably, that assurance is that this is not going helter-skelter, that we're really looking to deal with all the future traffic we expect.
Right.
And I think that, I don't think very many people have seen that new entrance going across from Lake of the Woods to Goodwin Drive yet, that no simple light, you gotta go around and do a U-turn.
Yeah, that's gonna be a challenge, but.
The only other thing I would put, my recollection was, I think there were some people that were maybe focused on the volume of the road, the number of cars on the road, like it was gonna happen within a couple, 4 or 5 years based on the GWAP plan. I think we did a pretty good job of saying, this is a
Yeah.
50-year vision, this is what it's gonna look like in 40 or 50 years. It won't look like this tomorrow, but we don't start planning for the future unless we start it today.
I actually heard some discussions, not at that meeting, but subsequent to that, about a big box culvert under Route 3 for pedestrian or other bike traffic or something like that.
Yeah, I heard, apparently there's a culvert that is scheduled to be replaced in the not terribly distant future, and what they're talking about is enlarging it such that it could be
Well, and depending on where they locate it, it could go right to that proposed town center.
it would be in that area, as I understand it.
In which case, we need to put parking on the Lake of the Woods side.
Yeah.
I think that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. I think that finishes your report. Board comment. Anybody have any board comment?
I would just be remiss if I did not mention that it is 9/11, and for everyone to please remember.
It's 17 years.
It was a Tuesday.
And I bet most of us can remember where we were when we first heard of this. I certainly
I know
reviewed
exactly
that.
where I was.
I know, so do I.
That was the first day I took off from getting ready to retire, and I was not in the Pentagon that day.
Goodness.
I was still working there, day before and day after. I'd taken that day off.
I went down about 4 o'clock to the Riverton building there in Barbersville to lower the flag, because nobody had thought to do it. And I heard a sound which got my full attention, very unusual. I heard an airplane. And I looked up, and there was a large plane going over with a smaller plane on either side.
And it happened to be blue and white.
And as far as I know, it was only 3 planes in the air that day, at that point. And of course, the president landed about half an hour later at Andrews Air Force Base. But yeah, it's the most attention an airplane ever got from me. Normally, you don't jump and look up at the sky when you hear an airplane. But yeah, 17 years ago.
Yeah.
I knew a man was in the air in Pennsylvania. And he said an F-15 flew up on one side and F-15 flew on the other side. The directions were, put it down on the ground, or we'll shoot you down. Do you understand? Send me a signal. I understand.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Yeah, quite a moment.
Also, we need to remind people that we do have a hurricane coming. Take preparation.
Yeah, I think
Tell
that's,
the crowd out here.
Let's see, I've seen stuff coming out from, I don't know how many different organizations explaining what people should be doing.
some of the reports of discussion I heard during the day, the people that have, mostly state officials from North Carolina, were talking about, the biggest concern they have is long-term power outages. And by long-term, they're talking about weeks or a month. And that, for rural communities like us, that really puts a bind on things.
Like Puerto Rico, huh?
Somewhat like Puerto Rico, that's right. Okay, any other board comment? Any questions on the information items? Appointments. I actually have one. I'd like to reappoint Stacy Burleson to the Youth Commission.
Does anybody else have a candidate for that library rotating at large vacancy? I've had a couple of people talk to me about it.
I mean, it's your slot, right?
No, this is an at-large, I think. It's been filled by Wally Groshine, who's from Lake of the Woods.
During the reorganization in 2015, I believe, it is a rotating at-large position, and it started in District 5, and when this term finishes out,
It's supposed to go to
moved through the
another-
cycle, so
It's supposed to go to another district?
But we're still in this,
when this term expires.
Yeah.
And Wally's term is still active, although he has resigned, his term is still active. And,
Until when?
Didn't have a date.
Till
on it.
after you select someone.
I have to look.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I wanna appoint a guy for 3 months or something,
Hang on, I can look right now.
cause he's been there forever. All right, well, nobody else is interested,
I don't have anyone that's,
okay,
June 30th of next year, so about another year.
okay, all right.
any other appointments? We need to, need a motion.
So move.
we're going back.
No. On-
Oh, for the-
On
For
the
the
appointment, the
appointment.
District Two
Oh, for the
appointment.
appointment, oh.
That motion.
Yeah.
Oh, that motion.
Oh, yeah, aye.
All right, all in favor, say aye, okay. All right, calendar. We have scheduled a public hearing, another one for the 9th
Yes, sir.
on the grading plan. Yeah, okay, everybody all right with that? Okay. Yep. All right, it says recess for closed meeting, that's what we're gonna do, except we're already in, we're just gonna reconvene, I guess.
Y'all going upstairs or you wanna go back?
Actually, we could probably just go in there.
Too obvious.
I wonder if,
Members of the board, to the best of your knowledge, were the only matters discussed in the closed meeting, public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and that only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. Mr. White?
Aye.
Mr. Crozier?
aye.
Mr. Frame?
Aye.
Mr. Goodwin?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?